Let's start at the beginning, and then we'll go to the end, and then we'll stop.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I have with me today Brett from the Wheel Weaves podcast. He's been on many episodes before. You're like...
I'm excited to be back, yeah.
I don't watch too many late shows, but don't a lot of the late shows have that trope where they have the same guest on, like, all the time? And
Oh, probably. It was like someone who has nothing better to do than come back on and
like,
again and again.
That's our Brett. That's our Brett. He keeps coming back. You keep filling the open slots that when we need them, so I really appreciate that.
And it's crazy. Because I'm not sure how much everybody knows, but like you sent out the list months ago for which chapters you want to be on, and I filled in I think it was 3 or 4 chapters. I was like, yeah, I'll be on these chapters because they're exciting. And you usually say, hey, if there's a double up of someone, then we'll just do our best to get your favorite chapters. And then you got back to me this time. You're like, oh, nobody picked the chapters you want to be on. And I was like, did I do something wrong? Did I pick the worst chapters out there or something?
I was just saying, this is my favorite. This one and the Crossing of the Streams are my 2 favorite chapters, and I'm just shocked
this is such
that
a
nobody
good
else was clamoring to do this chapter. Mashiara had every single person replied and was like, "Hey, I want to do the one where Nynaeve breaks her block," and I'm like, "Okay." Unfortunately, that's been promised for a while. Talir has me pretty much obligated to do whatever she wants. She's done so much work for SpoilerCon that she I don't have a choice there.
You have to. Yeah, and this chapter, this is a great one though, because it also picks up right from last chapter, right at the end of where the action started, and we get all the action.
Right, no, it's almost Call Me Nakomi was like, oh, we have to stop, and I was like, I mean, kind of, maybe she, I should have had her come back, but...
Yes, you have to stop because Brett called it.
Brett already asked for it. And because of scheduling issues, Aradia isn't going to be able to make it today, so it's just me and Brett. So, bringing it back to the old boys club.
We'll see how it goes. I have to ask, Seth, was that a bottle of water or a giant bottle of vodka? I just saw you took a swig of something, so I don't know.
It's water. No, I've got my beer here, but the beer is an extremely intense chocolate porter stout, and I need some water to wash it down with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Chapter 36, Blades, and our symbol is Fain's Blade, which is appropriate. But Blades, we both have the fight between Riatin and Rand and Fain's Blade. A lot of blades.
Yeah, a lot of swords.
Yeah. Min did not know whether to groan or shout or sit down and cry. Caroline, staring wide-eyed at Rand, seemed in the same quandary. With a laugh, Toram began rubbing his hands together. "Listen, everyone," he shouted. "You are going to see some sport. Clear a space! Clear a space!" He strode off, waving people away from the center of the tent. "Sheep herder," Min growled. "You're not wool-brained. You don't have any brains." "I would not put it quite so," Caroline said in a very dry voice. "But I suggest you leave now. Whatever tricks you think you might use, there are 7 Aes Sedai in this tent. 4 of them, Red Aja, lately arrived from the south on their way to Tarvalon. Should one of them so much as suspect, I very much fear that whatever might have come of today never will. Leave." We are in this middle of the scene. Toram and Rand have challenged each other to a battle, and everyone's like, oh, you're going to get your ass kicked.
Well, it's so funny because we did a little prep talk, but there's so much to talk about politics-wise that I'm pretty sure, hopefully you guys all covered last chapter. I haven't got to listen to that yet, but it's funny because as you were reading that and as you were doing the voice for Toram, I was thinking Toram is totally like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Just this big showboating man who's like, I'm going to show this lowly Trakan how to sword fight.
And he's absolutely a bully, right? That he has the skills.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Gaston was a big, strong guy.
That makes it worse. He's a blade master.
Yeah. Well, and he's in this sort of society where anyone who challenges him, he can just be like, oh, you challenge me? I'm going to fight you at this deadly thing that I am better than anyone else at. It's a huge dick move.
It's terrible. And I have a question to ask you actually once we get to the part where he basically beats Rand. I want to talk about that, but not yet. And then also the other thing I was just thinking here, because when you said the 7 Aes Sedai that are in the tent here, because there's the 4 Reds, yep, and then there's Cadsuane and her crew. And the attitude Rand has towards 7 Aes Sedai is so much different right now with them all being like in his vicinity. So much different from like where we picked up at the end of like last book when he just got like out of the whole do might as well thing. It's a crazy contrast.
Well, a lot of what we talked about in the last chapter was the fact that he seems to have gone through a depressive and then manic phase, and he's in the manic phase right now, and so he is very much not acting in a rational way because essentially he went on this steep depression where he thought he'd rape Min, which was bullshit. Min slapped him out of it, and then he went and dealt with the sea folk, and the Taviran thing was going nuts. So all of a sudden he's like, I can do anything. I'm the Dragon Reborn. And that's really where
we get that a lot.
Yeah. And so really where we are here in his manic phase, and that's where I think he's really just like, I don't care about the Aes Sedai. They're unimportant. I can deal with them. I'm the Dragon Reborn. So that's where he is.
So it's a little bit crazy what's going on here.
Well, yeah, it is. It's amazing that he's just brushing off Seven Aes Sedai when he, like...
Even though, like, he knows Cadsuane, like, he knows her, even with her, like, that relationship already there, it's still, like, such a questionable decision, I feel, he's going through. But the manic phase, like you said, that makes a lot of sense.
And there was some confusion around which Aes Sedai were in the tent, because there's the yellow, the gray, and the green are the three.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I thought the green was not necessarily Cadsuane in the previous chapter, but and also we read a note that in the previous chapter that he actually changed the three Ajas. One was a
oh, okay,
because he didn't name the yellow.
Yeah,
and obviously there's a yellow here.
Yeah, that's Samitsu. Is that her name?
Yep, Samitsu.
Yeah, and then Nyand.
This is where we need Aradia, because she would be on that right away.
Yeah. I'm like 80% sure.
Nandara?
No, Nandara's a maiden.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's Nyand.
Yeah, okay.
She's the gray. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. How? Nyand? Nyandi?
Right? Nyandi? Ah, it's one of those.
Do you have a pronunciation guide here?
Nyande. Seriously, Aradia, we're missing you already.
This is terrible. Why did we decide to do this?
Right? Like, gosh, we should have just waited for her to show up. Okay.
Nyanda. It'll be what the audiobooks say. That'll be the closest thing. And I don't have that downloaded, and I don't have time to download that right now.
No, that's not. It's not worth finding.
Okay. But that's the gray. That's the one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nyanda. Do we know what ends up happening to the Red Aja? Because they're not part of this group at all.
One of them gets killed in the mist, like, immediately.
But the other three...
I don't think we get a confirmation of who these other three are. Like, I've never picked up on that.
And we never get, like, someone being like, I can't believe I escaped the mists.
Yeah.
What Encyclopedia says, no clue to their identities or what their mission was or is. So, no idea. And that's pretty much,
they were tinkering in the forest.
Yeah, probably on the orders of Elida is my guess. I mean, being red.
Like, what else would it be? Yeah.
Right, just maybe trying to supporting the rebellion against Rand.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That does make sense.
The Occam's Razor explanation of why they're before Red Aja hanging out with the rebels.
I agree.
So Toram does the shitty, like, bully thing that, like, oh, the fight is on, and then it tries to attack you the second that the bell rings, just catch you off guard, because you're, like, not an asshole, and expect someone to, like, actually seize you up for a second.
Well, especially since he's, like, it makes it so much worse, the fact that he is so skilled. Like, I could understand if you're not that good, so you're trying to get any advantage you can to showboat against, like, this lowly, lesser Trekhan guy. But the fact that he is a Blade Master, like, you should, why would you assume he's a Blade Master, and only a Blade Master could keep up with what you're trying to do here? So, it's just him being, like, an ultra asshole.
Yeah, he's just, like, I'm guessing he wins most of his fights just on that first stroke. Just, like, stab. And he's too fast, and it's unexpected, and people just... I think he's very much shocked when it gets blocked.
Yeah, I could see this.
Like, for a moment, Toram stared at him, and Rand looked back calmly. Oh, you can actually catch that. That's a threat.
It's like, okay, I guess we're doing this. It's also such a great scene, because, like, Rand doesn't... I think it was last chapter, though, like, he does it because he doesn't take off his coat, he doesn't take off his gloves, because he doesn't want to show off who he is, obviously, with everything going on, so... But even that, and Toram is still just going at this guy.
This very much reminds me of Princess Bride, when they do the sword fight at the top of the cliffs. And it's that like
I know something that you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, turns out I'm also a blade master if I fight with my gloves off, you know?
I'm not left-handed.
Exactly. Yeah, I keep waiting.
I'm also not left-handed.
So the two of them, it's got that, definitely has that vibe without like the basic decency of not trying to kill each other.
For sure. Yeah. Because they were very nice to each other in The Princess Bride, and here not so much.
Not so much. Even though this is supposed to be a practice duel, and that was supposed to be to the death.
Yes. And this fight almost goes to the death, too. That's the question I want to ask, because Toram's moves at the end here is super questionable. Do you want to jump ahead to it now, or do you want to just wait till we get there?
Oh, just when he, like, hits him in the side?
Yeah, so, like, the tent basically gets ripped off or whatever, and then he hits Rand when he's not looking. And there's questionable, like, how that scene works out. Like, was everybody distracted and Toram just, like, was mid-swing? Or did Toram see that Rand was looking at the crazy mist and then hit him? And then after that, he goes for like a second stroke after he hits Rand.
Yes.
And is clearly already won.
Yes.
And that's like the big thing is like he's going for like, is that a killing blow? Or is he just trying to crack this guy on the head? Because like you can do serious damage with a practice sword.
I think he just wants to do a bunch of damage as much. Like Min says, like he is going for these killing strokes. Like that's what he does even in these practice rounds. Like he seriously hurts people. Yeah, I think he's willing to take another stroke. And, like, if...
I mean, he knows Aes Sedai are here, too, right? So, like, even if he does, like, I don't know, do a killing, in quotation, killing stroke on Rand...
He could be healed, yeah.
To, like, teach this young guy a lesson. If they want to save him, it's like, hey, the Aes Sedai can heal him.
But also, he's just, like, fuck Rand, right? Like, he hates this dude, all right? Like...
Yeah.
Don't forget, he is also one of the things we haven't talked about. Toram has had Fain in his ear this entire time. He is Fain corrupted. He is suspicious. He is hateful. He is full. He is willing to go beyond the norms of society and the norms of what this battle should be because he's influenced by Wormtongue.
That's a good point because that's the whole Fain thing where he bounces around to all the leaders and then like corrupts and whatever their motives were just get like a little less pure, a little more crazy.
And I don't know if you realize this, but Toram Riatin actually ends up as Fain's thrall and ends up fighting Lan in
Lan
Far
kills him,
Madding.
right?
Yeah, and Lan kills him.
Yeah.
Another swordmaster that Lan takes down without any problem.
No problem. I love it.
It's like a background battle. You're like, oh yeah, Lan's got it. Whatever.
Worried about this guy? I'm not worried about this guy.
But that's where Toram goes running off into the mist, and that's, he ends up just becoming a complete thrall to Fain.
Yeah.
Because he was already primed for it. He was already primed to hate Rand. And that's where he really says here, like, I hate him. He's doing this. This is Rand's fault. Of course it is.
Well, it's kind of interesting that he does become like a full, like you say, full thrall. Love that description of it. Because Fain does that same thing with Elida. He did it with Niall, right? But Riatin here, he like this guy gets taken to the next level. And I suppose he couldn't really do the same thing with Pedronile and with Elida just for the stations that they have. You wouldn't be able to like drag them with you.
Well, and I think it's also how we see him maturing, right? We see Padan Fain / Mashadar / Mordeath / what does he get? He gets this, not Sameshta, but what is his final name that he gets in...
Shai Sam.
Shai Sam, thank you. Here's my big question, and there is a debate about this.
Okay.
Is the mist Fain, or is it a bubble of evil?
Okay, well, technically, based on the companion, it's a bubble of evil. I would say it's both. I would say that it's a bubble of evil that's influenced by Fain. And the reason why I say that is because the weirdness, like, it almost starts as a bubble of evil, and then Fain, with everything that he is, like, mist is kind of his deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wind and mist and weird shadow monster type stuff, that's kind of Fain's thing. So I feel like it's got to be a one on top of the other, just because that's the entire point of this chapter is, like, evil on evil makes bad things, right? Wound on top of wound makes bad things. So it's like bubble of evil on top of Fain trying to do some crazy stuff using his newfound abilities. That's what I would say.
I hadn't thought of the evil combo that it could be.
It feels so much like both. Like, Fain's clearly not only using it to his advantage, but it's just like, it's the mist, especially, because it is mist. It's so much like Mashadar.
We also get the thought from Fain that he tried to do this once before. When in the last battle, as Shai-Sam, as he's becoming the Mist, he's like, I tried to do this once before. Sorry, I got a bug flying around my head. I tried to do this. We've got a fruit fly issue. We tried to do this once before, and I wasn't mature enough. And I think he's referring to this instance.
Yeah, I don't know what else it would be, because I don't remember any other scene with Fain that would be relevant. So that's just kind of like what I'm feeling from that vibe.
Also, I read into the companion, right? So the language of the companion talks about Hanlon and the White Lions, right? So he reads, and it says the White Lions were killed in a bubble of evil.
Yeah.
In this camp. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is that bubble of evil, because we don't see them actually being killed by. So there could have been a separate bubble of evil that killed Hanlon's guards.
But the point against that I'll make is that also in the companion, the description of the farmer who takes them away, the description is this is the farmer who took them away from the bubble of evil.
I also don't believe the companion's correct all the time.
I know.
That's
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I don't agree with the companion. I just don't think it's factually correct sometimes.
That's why I'm going with my it's evil on top of evil. Mm-hmm. It's the combo. We're doing a pair up thing. Crazy crossover event.
I don't buy it in the slightest. To me, this has always been Fain. This is Fain saw Rand. He left the tents and he initiated the process to create a new Mashadar out of himself. Yeah. And all of this is his Mist and his attempt to kill Rand, right? And that's why he goes in and out of the Mist with no problem. Like, I don't think there's any bubble of evil. I think that's entirely a mistake in the companion. And that's my headcanon.
That's interesting that you say that, but it's like that comes back to what you said about him in his final form, right? His final form is Shai-Sam. But is he strong enough to physically to do all this Smith stuff and to make it rip apart an entire army worth of people? Or is he just like capitalizing on a crazy bubble of evil that started and he's able to like use the draw the power from what is already happening and then, make it that much worse? So that's the only issue I have with what you're saying, is that does he have the ability to make it right from like nothing to 100 here? Is this all Fain or is it like 50% Fain? So
I see. The thing is, I think he's been storing up souls, right? He's been he's been killing the Fades. He's been killing the Trollocs. He's been stealing.
Sure, yeah.
He went through. He ate all the souls of the White Cloaks, and they all had to be with him for a while. And he's been slowly consuming them, building up his power, and then when he creates the Mist, that's essentially creating. In Shadar Logoth, the Mist is made of the souls of the people who died.
Yeah.
Because they're the eyes during the day and the Mist at night. And so, I think he's just finally expressing all the souls that he's been collecting all this time. And he wasn't ready, but Rand traveled to him. Rand randomly, he can still sense where Rand is,
Yeah.
And he's out there collecting souls, influencing rebels, and all of a sudden Rand is in his freaking backyard.
Oh shit.
He's like, oh
this
shit,
is the time.
I'm going to try this trick. This is not something I was really prepared for. I'm not quite ready, but maybe I can take out Rand. And then when the Mist monster itself doesn't take out Rand, Fain tries with the dagger itself.
Yeah. That's so funny that you put it that way, because now I'm just thinking it's like burning sorcery points. So like, do it. This is he's here. So, I mean, that's a good point that you have. And then, I mean, then does he have to like recharge that, the soul count, if you want to call it that? Then he charges it up again by the time the last battle hits. Plus he's like leveled up, I suppose. So, it's a lot of question marks here.
There are a lot of question marks. And you do have sort of the consolidating Mist. Like, I feel like there is a little bit of that, like, but what are these forms forming? That's something we've never seen before, is like physical things, like objects forming in the Mist. That's different from Mashadar. So like, it's not exactly Mashadar, but but Shai-Sam isn't exactly Mashadar either, and neither is Shai-Sam this thing.
It's not the same. It's like same. Yeah.
So I see this as a baby step on the way to that.
Yeah.
And I never thought of it as like piggybacking on a bubble of evil, just because the timing seems to be entirely initiated by Fain.
Okay.
Because like there's a line here where, right, once the tent gets pulled off, Toram's like, Gerald, like, burn you, where are you?
Yeah, he's like
Gerald,
calling
for more death, right? Like,
because Fain has clearly seen that Rand saw him or whatever happened, because Rand was like, that's a dead man right there.
Right, exactly. And And if the second he saw him, he turned around and fled and initiated the mist. And then the mist came in from outside, and he was hoping that the mist was going to tear Rand apart. I know the companion says otherwise.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
I don't, and like, especially after Brandon put that line in about he tried this once before. That has to be a reference to this incident.
Okay. Yeah, no. Yeah, like, I get it.
So, that's my argument.
You take the Fain stance, I'll take the 50-50 stance.
Fair. But, that's okay. But can we both agree that the companion of It's Just a Bubble of Evil, like, how the hell...
Oh, yeah.
Somehow Fain has to be involved. Like...
Yeah, I don't agree that it's just a bubble of evil. I think that there's something else going on. There's a little bit more to it.
Yeah, it's hard to have a mist monster that consumes people with Fain involved and not be like...
Fain involved and be like, it's totally unrelated.
It's totally unrelated. It's like...
Yeah. What is Varen's line?
Providential.
How
providential.
Providential. Okay, right?
Yeah, that's very providential, for sure.
Okay, should we go back to this fight scene?
Totally, yeah, it's badass. At this point, I think it's confirmation that Rand is a Blade Master. We see him for once, like, unlike in Book 2 where we saw him fight, another T name.
Yeah, Turak, yeah.
Toram, Turak, whatever, the Blade Masters. They all have T names. He clearly wasn't good enough to beat him. Like, it was definitely, embracing the void and the fact that the guy was arrogant.
Yeah, and a little bit of luck and a little bit of whatever else you want to call it.
Taviran. And then we've seen him fight a bunch of other people, but he kind of got his ass kicked by Bilal. There's been a few other sword fights, but he's been really practicing, and these, like, 4 or 5 other people at once. He's really upped his game. And now he's really holding his own with another Blade Master. And it's like, oh yeah, he's definitely also a Blade Master.
Do you have any issues with the whole thing about Rand fighting like 2, 3, 4, 5 people at the same time? Just in like the reality of it?
I mean, it's as real as the juggling or the learning things in a year and a half. And
you know what? I buy the whole reborn thing and I get the whole channeling thing, but like fighting 5 people at the same time.
I mean, really where I get hung up on is the juggling 7 balls at once. Like that juggling, like when Tom juggles more balls than like the world record holder by like 3 or 4 and like does it like it's casual and like, no human can do that. Like you're...
Well, here's the thing, Seth. I can juggle 7 balls, but just I can do it one time.
You can flash 7?
Yeah, I can do it 7. I can throw them all up in the air.
Yeah.
I can juggle it one time.
Can you catch
one
them
rotation?
Can you catch them all too?
No, of course not. But I can get them up
there. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Everyone can throw up 7 balls.
Yeah.
Hell, I can throw up as long as you can hold them. You can throw up as many as you want. The question is, can you catch any of them again? The fog that grabs the Red Sister and just breaks her neck. That's always I always imagine that as really brutal.
Oh yeah, this entire sequence, it's crazy because RJ's writing in this chapter is if you actually read it for what is happening, like Min throws up at one point because she sees a horse that's like whinnying get ripped in half.
Like gore, viscera.
Yeah, and it's one sentence of, oh, Min saw a horse that's screaming get ripped in half, and then it's like, oh, change the subject. But if you lingered on that at all, this scene is horrifying. It's like a freaking nightmare come to life here.
This whole thing is a nightmare. You're walking off into the fog and just random dead half bodies, limbs are lying on the ground.
People are crawling under the fog with like
a cut off in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Guy comes up with like half his face off. He's like, it's crazy.
This is horror, absolutely. Like some of the most horrific writing you can ever read if you're actually imagining it. And seeing what he's writing and visualizing.
Well, that's why I like his writing is because it's not the blood and the guts. He's not like, oh, and blood spurted out this way, because you've totally read, like everyone's read that kind of fiction where it's just over the top of the description of the blood and guts and it's not necessary.
No, it's not necessarily. Well, and I feel like that was something that Martin did very successfully. And then it got copied to the point where it became unsuccessful and really frustrating. This was really before that trope of, like, let's make everything bloody became a really common fantasy trope.
It's kind of like I don't need to see the blood everywhere to understand what's happening.
It's kind of why I'm not a big fan of, like, Joe Abercrombie. It's not that I think his writing's bad. It's just, like, it's very bloody, and I just don't always need to see that.
I get the point that the Aes Sedai is dead when her head is twisted around. I get it.
Right.
She didn't make it.
Right, and it's like, and Margot's making a good point that it's like, It's scary to read without being grossed out. Like, scary without being gross, I think, is the line that he's walking.
Yeah, gratuitous violence I feel like that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the reason why I don't like watching the Saw movies and stuff. It's just like, it's too much for me. I almost shut off Breaking Bad because the whole bathtub scene, spoiler alert, I don't know, like when they dissolve that guy in the bathtub, like that early in the series, I was like, I don't know if they're doing this in like episode 4 or whatever it was, I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't like it that much.
It's rough. The gross factor is hard to stomach sometimes.
No, but the writing here, like, back to it, love it.
So this goes back to an old theory of mine. He gets whacked on the side, and the scar doesn't break open. And it seems to me that it's rare that any physical injury breaks open the scar.
Yes.
What breaks open the scar is his closeness or proximity to the taint and channeling and evil.
Yep, I agree.
It's not, and it's one of those things where it's not necessarily obvious, but like, so often he gets hit on the side or he falls and he's like, oh, it hurts, but it's fine. And then a few minutes later, he gets exposed to some sort of evil, and all of a sudden it breaks open.
Yeah. Like climbing the Stone of Tyr, right? He felt the tugging, but it didn't break open. But then, interestingly enough, just because this is where I am in the books right now with Danny, is we just saw the Kyrian battle in Fires of Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And with the tower, because we get the lightning breaking the tower down and the tower falls and his side splits open. But this is, like you said, like, yeah, sure, physical injury, falling down into whatever. There's still that portion where he's been channeling for literally hours and he is at the brink of craziness, and that's where LTT, like, for one of the first times, we get more in that end of the Battle of Kyrian sequence of LTT in his head, more of that than I think we've gotten so far in the series combined. It's so much because it's all the taint and all the everything kind of seeping in. So,
and he's so tired that he's not filtering it out at all. He's just letting the madness roll over his head. Yeah.
So it's like physical injury, but that also makes sense where it's like maybe that weakens the wound when it is. Like, I love the theory that you've got with it's based on taint and exposure.
Because, like, and Donald Flynn talks about how it's a cyst of evil. And so it makes sense that, like, if you pump that full of more evil, that's when it breaks open. Not necessarily when you physically hit it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if anything's going to physically break it open, a direct strike from an asshole on the wound is going to do it, right? Like,
yeah. Okay, to be fair, it doesn't say specifically that he's hit in the side with the wound.
It doesn't. You're right. And I am making that assumption, that it is the same side.
But the point still holds, yeah.
Riatin's smart enough to see the side that he is nursing a little bit. Like, there's no doubt that Rand's in pain from that, and there's no doubt that someone who's used to reading body language isn't totally aware that there's a wound and pain in that side. And Riatin's enough of an asshole that I'm sure he targeted the wound. I'm absolutely
yeah, I was
sure.
Gonna say, he's an asshole, but he's not an idiot. So, like, he knows which side, like you said, to favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyways, this is the part, right, at this point that I'm reading right now is he hits him in the side, and then Toram sneers, lifting his sword high to strike again. And that's when he freezes, staring at the crazy gray mist that's going on. So, like, was he totally going for, like, a killing blow or, like, I'm going to smash you on top of the head just to prove a point?
I think just a maiming blow, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and then, like, if these eyes said I want to heal him, then sure. But if not, whatever.
The tent comes off, and I like the way Cadsuane sort of organizes everybody who's still around. The Red Sisters must run off.
Yeah, we really don't get them at all. We get to see the one who dies, and then we don't see them.
Because, like, Cadsuane shoots the fire, assuming she's embracing the power through one of her Angreal. Her paralysis net does crazy things. Just absolutely crazy.
I read the description before this, and, like, just a recap of them, like, it's crazy what's going on there. It's no wonder she's a friggin' superhero.
She has Matt's Terangreal, first of all.
She does. For both sides of the power.
For both sides of the power. Which I think Matt's is too, by the way. Ooh. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
So the lightning is a secondary effect, right?
It's not the direct power.
It's not the direct power, right? The lightning, yeah.
Okay.
So there's you can cast lightning as a power, but that's not what happened. This was lightning from
it's like
the clouds.
flinging rocks at people.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. We never see, like, so rarely ever see Matt come in contact with the male half of the power. Like, all the time, the women are attacking him to try to get it. But like he's never around male channelers. He completely avoids like asha'man at all times.
Editing Seth here. Halima does channel Adam, and that's using the male half of the source. So that's proof that the amulet works against both halves.
I think there's enough to say that it is, but anyways, like the fact that Cadsuane has that, it's absolutely crazy.
And that's also one of the reasons I think Matt's works against both, is because Cadsuane's does.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So,
but yeah, she's got that. She's got an Angreal. She's got something that points out men who can channel. She's got, just a whole bunch of other, like, she's got something that's an actual physical shield against knives and daggers and swords.
Right, and it like spreads out the damage across her entire body. Yeah.
Dude, Rand could have used that. Do you know how many times people have shot freaking arrows at him? It's like, put that on the Dragon Reborn. What are you doing, Cadsuane? Seriously.
I mean, we got things to talk about Cadsuane later on here too. So
Cadsuane's a whole nother topic. I do like the way she organizes all these people, though. She's like, let's go, the two triangles. It almost reminds me of the
Star of David.
The Star of David, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's like the Star of David, where you've got the three channelers on one triangle, and then the three swordsmen on the other, and then Min and Caroline in the middle.
That's kind of what I envisioned too, so. They all go with them at the beginning, because Toram even goes with them, and Darlin goes, and it's not until Rand does his bit that Toram freaks out.
Rand, seriously, can you please not shoot fireballs from your hand? Even Cadsuane is like, I will cover for you, right? If you just don't, she's like, we will take care of anything, wink, wink, nod, nod, like, make the fire appear in the sky, don't cast it from your hand.
I was gonna say, like, because it's canon that you don't have to use your body to channel. It doesn't have to come from your, I know it's like an intuitive thing to like, I throw the fireball from my hand, but that's not how it has to work.
No, and he doesn't have to use balefire, right? It's clear that fire of any kind is working against these shadows.
Literally, swords are working, sort of.
Sort of. They at least slow them down,
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the one place where maybe your bubble of evil thing comes back, right? I'll walk it back. In Ruidian, as they're leaving, after Matt gets hung and Rand gets the dragons, they get attacked by the Dust Devil dragons. And it's the same sort of thing, where you can break them up with swords, but then they reform, come back up, and attack you again. And they're the forms, and they're like, in this case it's mist forms, but in that case it was dust forms.
Yeah.
I can see where the bubble of evil thing comes from, and I can see the parallels. But with Fain there and the mist, it's just...
I know, it's too much to be just complete coincidence, so...
And the dust was already there, so... And whatever. This is something I would love to get a Robert Jordan question about.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of things.
Because, and I don't think Sanderson is going to be able to, I think he would point to the statement by Fain and say, that's what I think, right? I think this was a Fain thing.
Yeah, and it's like, as much as, Sanderson has done fantastic things to help the community in the series, it's like, there's only so much that he can say, right? Or that he would want to say, because then it's just, like, overstepping.
There's only so much that was in the notes, right? And, if it's not in the notes, he's making it up as a fan himself.
With slightly more authority, but it's still equally, yeah.
In those cases where he didn't write it, he didn't consult with Harriet and the group, and it wasn't in the notes, I know that he's just like, I don't want to make new canon. That's not what I'm here to do. That's why he doesn't answer those questions.
So what I'm hearing is we need to corner Harriet and then ask her all these questions.
To be honest, from what I understand, Harriet's not the right person to ask. There are other people.
Would it be like Maria and Alan, or?
Maria and Alan would be the people who are the authorities on this.
Yeah.
Because Harriet, she was an editor of the language, and she was the business person, but when it comes to magic systems or continuity, she's like, and she's also an 82-year-old lady at this point.
Hey, you tell us who we got to corner.
Yeah,
we'll go do it.
Yeah, no, Maria, and Maria's not hard to corner. She's willing to be cornered. You can ask her all the questions you want.
Yeah.
But she's the same way, where she's like, I don't know, and she'll say I don't know to a lot of questions.
Yeah, and that's fair, because at the heart of it, it wasn't any of our creations, right?
No, and that's why we're all just like, we wish. There's a whole group of us that are like, we want to ask Robert Jordan these questions, and we didn't get a chance to after it was finished. We only got to ask him these questions before it was finished. And then he raffled us, so.
As a ultimate cosmic joke.
Yeah, right. We're gonna find out. We don't know anymore.
Yeah.
You didn't write it. So we get the names of the two girls, the gray and the yellow, Nanda and Samitsu. Samitsu luckily being there as being a really powerful, the best healer. Yeah.
The best healer ever. Yeah. But she only does it with the spirit, air, and water. She doesn't do it 5 power style.
No, that's right, because it's the traditional, Aes Sedai healing, yeah. And that's where Flynn does something very different.
Exactly. There's a whole... I love that sequence with the whole, Flynn and Deshiva.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay. Can't contain myself. One of my giant issues with the writing style of this chapter is the back and forth description of Cadsuane as the green sister or the gray-haired sister or the gray-haired green sister, because there's also a gray sister.
Yeah.
It's this is not helpful. Yes, the gray-haired green sister had taken control.
That one.
Yeah.
As opposed to the gray-haired or the gray
sister with
green hair.
Yeah.
Or the yellow sister with blue balls.
Exactly. Yeah. It's it's hard to keep track.
Which one's which? So he uses balefire. I think we're at that point, right?
Yeah, we're there now. So because it's a woman who's coming out of the mist,
right? And she again takes off right away. We never get any hint about who she is or what her station is. Yeah, but that is enough to scare off, of course, the Padan Fain influenced Toram Riatin. And this is the last we see of him. We assume he goes off into the mist and becomes the thrall, and then he pops up again, fighting Lan in Farmatting.
Yeah, because Toram from the beginning was oh, this is Althor's work.
So what do you think about Cadsuane slapping Rand in the same way that and saying basically you're not allowed to use balefire?
This entire sequence is interesting because of what he says after that. So number one, I understand why she does it. Because, there's the whole aspect of the physical punishment in this series. I get it. Let's just not talk about that stuff. So she slaps him. Don't ever do that. Never balefire. Never ever. Because she does understand from my image of this. She gets why even the Forsaken agreed not to use balefire, because ripping the fabric of space-time is bad.
Only if you live in space-time.
I mean, it's I live in this universe, idiot.
Yeah, right.
It's
right.
Yeah, I want to keep it. I want to keep it whole. But Rand just uses it, and then he keeps using it, and he doesn't stop using it. He always has a justification for why he can use it. And side note, Moraine also has that exact same thing, where she's never use it, except if you have to. Because she used it on the Dark Hounds, and she used it on, what's-his-face, Bilal?
Yeah.
But Rand does it when he feels that it's necessary. But her hitting him is don't do it. But his response of, he's already super worked up. He is on edge from everything that's happened. And then his response is great. You were wrong, Cadsuane. He's real. I'm certain of it. I know he is. Because he's talking about LTT in his brain.
Totally.
I'm of the opinion, I think we agree on this, LTT is not real.
Yes. Yeah, we're all on the same page.
Good. I'm for what Cadsuane does.
The slap or the just saying no balefire? What part of that?
Yeah. I think that, hitting him is, sure, whatever, let's go with it. I'm not for as much as I can be.
Sure.
Is that fair? Okay.
Just, do you think, you talking about in the spanking a kid because they do something dangerous to get their attention type way, or in the...
Yeah, so I'm not a spanker, right? And I don't agree that spanking has any value to teaching anyone, but I think that even just getting her point across in an aggressive way, you do what you got to do sometimes.
I think one of the things that's going on is Rand's mind isn't necessarily all there. I'm guessing that people have spoken to him, and he has absolutely not absorbed what they're saying, as he's going a little crazy, and sometimes
it's bring your physical body back into the realm of your mental body. It's let's focus
I want your
attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't think it's one of those like jaw unhinging slaps. It's like what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Don't do that again.
And that's tough to sort of address in our society is like any kind of hitting is not okay, and like psychiatrists have said,
I agree, and I get
like,
that.
it's just and so on that level it's like hitting is bad, right? Like but Rand is in a very unique position, and Cadsuane is also this is not necessarily just like a rule, it's a unbreakable law. Like Balefire, you are risking the destruction of the very fabric of our universe.
You know what? I feel like I should go on record and be like, if you know someone who's risking the very fabric of our space-time and our universe, I give you permission to give him like a slap on the cheek and be like, get your head in the game, buddy. Like, Seth, what are you doing? We got to cut this out here.
Right. So, it's, yes.
There's levels to it that it's like, I can't just like completely be like, oh, Cadsuane is horrible and I don't agree with it for the reason that I just go back to like my sports background where it's like growing up and it's like, get your head in the game, like hands on the shoulder. Let's have a timeout. Slap on the cheek, buddy. Let's get your head in the game. We can do this.
Yeah. Cause sometimes like, if you're sitting there, you're like, a Three Stooges slap, like I'll do that to myself just to wake myself up, and like it's not like a physical aspect. Yeah. So it's like I get, it's literally just getting. Actually, that kind of hurt now that I did that. I'm like, ow, my face hurts now. But it's not like it's not damaging me, and
yeah.
And so
that's why it's a fine line we got to tread.
Exactly.
I get it. Like I get it.
He's a large man, and she's not breaking his jaw. He appears to barely even notice it.
That's what I was saying. It's like, and again, it's like, oh, just because you don't break their jaw. Like, there's so many things we can go down here that it's just, it's not worth it.
It's not, yeah.
So.
And there'll be lots of time to talk about Cadsuane's physical punishment, and there's issues with that. And there'll be, I'm sure Aradia and I will get into that in some depth, but no.
Like, she's an old school lady, and you're not changing her ways. I just imagine her like the 120-year-old Russian woman who like will beat the bear away off her property with the broom. It's like, you're not changing her ways. This is what she's doing.
I mean, I'm just thinking about all the Catholic nuns that are, were born far less than 300, 400 years ago.
Yeah.
Who still use the ruler and capital punishment and stuff like that. Like,
it's like that, but that's the great part of the character development of that in the series. Like, we can disagree with it in today's standards, but it's like these characters wholeheartedly, this is what they do. It makes sense in the realm of what's going on.
And so in that moment where he is being a little vulnerable and basically being like, no, Cadsuane, like, I'm pretty certain the voices in my head are real. Fain jumps out of the mists, and I like, this is such a, like, I want to see this. I want this to be the best jump scare of the entire series. Like,
oh yeah, because it's such like because he quiets down. Mm-hmm. He's like calm, talking to Cadsuane, and he's like, no, he's real. Like, I know he's real. And it's like, I can imagine this like peaceful moment almost between them where it's like just like no music, no nothing. It's quiet.
Right. And you're in the fog, so everything sort of calms down, and then just absolutely. Yeah, no, this is such an awesome visual. I was just watching Twin Peaks again, and there's a scene in one of the early episodes when are you familiar with Twin Peaks at all?
I am not, but I can pretend that I am if you need me to.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
So there's a scene
I know that. Yeah.
When Bob is, the mother has a vision and sees Bob just like crouched at the base of the bed looking up at her, and she screams and then disappears. It's just this great jump scare. And Bob is enough like Padan Fain with that greasy, long-haired, evil look that like I imagine them being the same.
Is this a horror movie?
Twin Peaks?
Is Twin Peaks a horror movie? I thought this was like I don't even know how to read your reaction right now. I thought it was like a mountain climbing movie, something like that, because like Twin Peaks, like two mountains. No, okay, which is it? What is it?
Twin Peaks was a 1980s surrealist TV show about the murder.
I wasn't even born then, Seth.
Oh well, I thought it was like popular or something. Like I thought it got a whole resurgence in the 90s. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was David Lynch. Do you know David Lynch?
Totally.
Okay. No, God damn it.
I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand the reference here.
Oh, he's
Do
Canadian. Okay, that
do you
makes
remember?
sense.
Do you remember the last time I was on? I unfortunately yelled at you for not knowing who the Lonely Island is.
Oh no. Okay, so
This is like this. This is the same thing that you're doing to me.
Yeah. How dare you not know
How
a
dare you not
TV
know,
show
yeah.
that was on American television before you were born?
Exactly.
You're pathetic. I don't even want you on this podcast anymore.
See, this is why Aradia's not here, and this is why I'm not getting invited back on. So.
Twin Peaks. No, so Twin Peaks is amazing. It's a surrealistic TV show about a whodunit murder mystery in the middle of nowhere America that's got some very, like, folksy people, but also, like, weird visions. And
Okay.
there's the dream with the midget where they all talk backwards. And yeah, that's in the Red Room. It's creepy. Those of you who know Twin Peaks know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't are going, what the fuck?
Because when you said jump scare with like a creepy person at the end of the bed, I was thinking of that that horror movie where it's like the little girl was under the sheet and she was like, what was that? It was a super
7
horrifying
Days or something like that, or The Ring, or
Maybe.
one of those. Yeah,
I can't remember. It's like one of those like terrifying movies
where the
that
hair's
I
over
hate
her
horror.
face.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I hate those movies. I hate them so much. Yeah.
This isn't quite that bad. This is more. Twin Peaks is hard to describe. Surrealist is probably like if someone took Salvador Dali and made a TV show out of his paintings, it would be the Twin Peaks. Like, and I don't know how to. It's like
that's actually a decent description. Like I can wrap my head around that description. So.
Because, like, in a lot of ways, it's, like, in some ways very campy and silly, but at the same time, it is horror and a murder mystery, and, like...
Yeah.
The stakes are very low, but feel very high to the people, which makes for some ridiculous situations. And everybody's sleeping with everybody in the town. So Rand gets nicked by the dagger.
Yes. And it goes down immediately.
Immediately. Well, and we've seen, like, within seconds, you get cut by the dagger, that corruption spreads and kills you...
Like, super dead immediately.
I believe the only reason he doesn't die is because Fain hits the cyst of evil that already exists.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, there's no question in my mind that he's only alive because the blade goes across the old wound. So, although, yeah, it's killing him, it's still trying to fight. The evils are trying to fight each other first. Rand dying is a side effect.
Again, we'll talk about this later, but Shiva... trying to keep Rand alive. The dark and the light sides both want Rand alive. It's only Fain, the agent of chaos, that doesn't want Rand to make it to the last battle. Everybody else wants the contest to happen.
Yeah.
They just want their side to win. Fain wants to throw a wrench in the gears and just interrupt the whole thing and prevent the contest from happening in the first place.
Yeah, he's the renegade, like from the beginning.
He's the Joker, the chaos element in the gears, absolutely. And he sees these two as both his enemies, right? Like, he is both an enemy of the Dark One, but also an enemy of the Creator. This is not an enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's my enemies are my enemies, and I don't like them, and they can fight each other, and I'm going to kill them both and use them against
And
each
he
other.
doesn't have any friends.
No.
Yeah.
He just has thralls. Sumitsu knocks Min over with the power. She literally jerks her feet out from under her to get her out of her way. Do you think that Sumitsu does that? I mean, she's the one who yells, move out of my way, so I have to assume.
Yeah, it's so vague. Like, I could see it being Cadsuane, but because didn't Cadsuane was holding Rand, and then Min, like, shoved her out of the way to hold Rand. Because Cadsuane was sitting on the slope above, holding Rand's head in her lap, ...
He fell against Cadsuane, catching at her to hold himself up, pulling them both down.
Yeah. And then Cadsuane is, like, sitting on the slope, and that, like, because she fell with Rand, and then Cadsuane is holding Rand's head in her lap, and then Min, like, jumps forward, and it says, Aes Sedai or no, she pushed the woman away from Rand and cradled his head in her arms. So Min pushes Cadsuane away so that she can be the one holding him, because it's like that whole thing.
It does seem that Cadsuane did try to heal him, though, in that second, as they fell.
For sure.
Because Sumitsu says, if you hadn't tried first...
Yeah.
And she doesn't deny that she did try.
Like, Cadsuane can probably do, like, a little something, but obviously, like, she's not as talented. Like, she can do some basic, but that's the whole Sumitsu thing is Cadsuane talks her up like, you're the best of the best of the best that we've ever had, ever.
And we actually get from Cadsuane's POV, she talks about Sumitsu and how she uses what works. And this is what's interesting, actually, and I think this has a lot of relevance to how Cadsuane treats Rand, is she very much reads people and treats them the way they needed to be treated to be the success they need to be. And with Summitsu, she is more than capable of being the nice, buttery, you're the best in the world, you can do it, you're wonderful, nothing, you can do no wrong. And then she immediately perks up and does a great job, right? Cadsuane is totally capable of doing that. So I think the way, the assumption then is that the way she treats Rand really is necessary for Rand, and that it's catered towards him. And if she had treated him like Summitsu, it would have been a disaster.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too.
And a lot of people are like, no, she was a bully to him. She treated him like shit. Like, there's no way.
A lot of the things, like from an outside perspective, reading the way Cadsuane treats Rand is like terrible, and you're like, oh my god, you're such a. It's annoying. Like it's honestly it's frustrating.
Absolutely.
The way not only that she treats Rand, but that she treats all the asha'man, and but it's also problematic the way every Aes Sedai treats every asha'man, because it is what it is. Like it's hard to separate. It is hard to separate. But I agree that she does what Rand needs. It's not what we want. It's what Rand needs to get to where he needs to be.
And I think that's the point that Jordan tries to make with Cadsuane is like...
Yeah. It's like tough love. Tough love it is, I guess, right?
Again, I think as times have changed, we've realized that tough love is less effective than maybe we thought it used to be. Like, really all it is piling on trauma. And I think that from that perspective, we can look at that and be like, this was not helpful. But he's writing it like it is, and he's writing it like it's supposed to be helpful. He's writing it like this is what Rand is going to respond to.
Well, it's the whole issue between like positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, and most people are going to say that only positive reinforcement works, but like I know anecdotal evidence, but like for me personally, because I played volleyball, right, in high school, my coach was like undeniably a major asshole to me. Not to everybody, but like for me, because negative reinforcement worked really, really well to motivate me. He knew it and I knew it, so he did it. But it was like, yeah, you can say like there could have been better ways to do it, but what worked, it worked, right?
Whereas I'm more like Summitsu. I need someone to be like, it's okay, you're wonderful, you're fine, keep going. Like I need someone to encourage. Someone says, you're shit, you suck. I'm like, oh, then why am I even doing this? Like...
Yeah, and it's like for me the reverse. If you're like, oh, it's okay, Brett, you're fine. Like it doesn't really get me anywhere. But if you're like, hey, you're the fucking worst, you need to do better because your best isn't very good right now. That works for me. So it is kind of the difference that different people like overall, sure, negative reinforcement probably doesn't work, but it doesn't mean that it never works. And you got to be really careful about using that because it's very easy for that to go terribly, terribly wrong too.
Yeah, and that's something actually with training dogs, and with Timber, like positive reinforcement works 99% of the time better than negative reinforcement. But if you don't want them to go into a room, yell at them real loud the first time they go into the room. They'll never, Timber will never go into a room again if I just absolutely freak out the first time he goes into it, and like that, it works remarkably well.
Well, it's the same thing as like raising kids. It's like there's... And I mean, probably I'm gonna apologize ahead of time because you're probably gonna get a lot of flack on podcasts now but for raising a kid, it's like there's some parents who are gonna say that you never yell at your kid, you never raise your voice, you never use the word no. I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree with you because like there's a line where if the kid is doing something that's literally and physically dangerous to them, like sometimes you gotta be like, you cannot do that. That is a big no. You don't do that. You don't run across the street because next time I don't get to discipline you for doing that. It's just you're dead because you ran across the street. So there's a line.
And I think what people want to say is like, if you don't want to lose your control because then they don't respect. They're like, oh, you're out of control. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, I think there's a way to get angry and be like, listen, I am angry about that because you were in danger, and I'm going to make sure that, like, and again, I'm not a parent, so absolutely I have no, oh man, parenting advice is just the hardest, right?
It's just, it's tough. And even parents, like even I as a parent, just because I'm a parent doesn't mean I'm the best parent or know everything about parenting. Like that doesn't give me instant credibility because just for the fact that I am a parent, right? But that comes back to the Cadsuane slapping Rand thing. It's like she is angry and it is dangerous, even if Rand thinks it's just a little bit of balefire.
Yeah, right. And it's like, yeah, that's just a little bit of universe-ending power, right?
Yeah,
like
just a little.
How
bit.
much is okay? Like we clearly see during the last battle, They hit too much. Very, in a lot of ways, it reminds me a lot of like how much carbon released into the atmosphere is okay, right?
Yeah.
Like we can all release a little bit, and it'll probably be.
It's all super controversial topics that it's like everybody's got an opinion on.
Right.
So
right, but at some point, too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere causes some serious problems. So we all make an agreement that we're not going to release any carbon dioxide. Seems to make a little sense to me. But
I'd prefer my world not to be on fire. But hey, Canada is literally on fire again. So hey,
Oregon too.
Yeah,
there's people in New York breathing the smoke from the Oregon fires.
There is ash raining down from the sky in Ontario at my mom's place. Literal ash again. Not even like, oh, it's new.
It went at some point when you're like, oh, ash is predicted on a regular basis in your forecast. You're like,
yeah, it's like this is bad.
Maybe the
I
world
think I read this series in Mistborn, and it didn't go well for them either. Wasn't there a book about this?
Yeah, I was pretty sure
Guys,
Broken Earth. No.
You did what to the moon?
It'll be back. Don't worry. It'll be back. We just got to catch it when it comes back.
Yeah. No. Like it'll be, Wheel of Time, man. It comes around, right? Okay, were we talking about this chapter? I don't know.
We get Sumitsu's attempt at healing, which does seem to be the traditional flailing, gasping, 3-power healing.
Yes.
Even though she's very, very good at it. And it does, now it's like, it's not actively bleeding anymore. It's not actively spreading disease. So there is something to that. But the combination is slowly killing him.
Yes. Because she describes it as, it's the cyst full of evil. And that's the OG Rand wound.
Yep.
The gash is the new kind of different evil that is now gonna, like, fight it. That's why I kind of see, like, Rand dying as, like, a side effect of the battle within the wound.
Well, I mean, like, how much of his body can contain that battle, right? It's like...
Yeah.
It's always been sort of a slow poison seeping into him, and that's pretty much always was what was going to kill him. And now, it's like, it's way worse. Way worse. And this is where she's like, he's going to die. As it is right now, if they don't do anything more. And, okay, so here is something to think about. Rand is one with the land is one with Rand, the Dragon Reborn. The boar and the seals are very much related to the wound in his side, and as the seals break open, the wound in his side becomes worse. Yep, and that leads back to the taint and the... Yeah. But then how does the Padan Fain dagger slash, I sort of think of that as like, how does Shadow Logoth sort of play into that? And really, I think of that as the wound on the land of Shadow Logoth. That's true, because and we kind of get that with the whole cleansing, right? Is that Shadow Logoth is a unique spot, like physical location, but also it's like, it also almost has that same like metaphysical element that like Shadow Logoth has, where that is where the pattern is the weakest. Mm-hmm. Like it's a similar kind of vibe, and I don't know enough about metaphysics to offer more on that. But it's like a weak spot. And I think that might be why Rand thinks that getting rid of Shadow Logoth is going to help with the wound in his side. At one point, he was hoping that would get better now that Shadow Logoth was gone. But the poison is in his side. It was in the dagger. Fain is the source of it. Like, it's kind of the same as like taking the once you take the dagger out of Shadow Logoth, like it's out now. It's out. Yeah, and especially since both the seed of Mashadar and the seed of Mordeth got out, right? The power in the dagger, and then the mind in Fain, the soul of took over Fain, and so both of those parts are out. There's some interesting otherness going on there, where you've got Fain, who had been touched by the Dark One, Mordeth, who had his power, their souls combined, and then also the power of the dagger, and the way that comes together to create some new, interesting, unique thing. Yeah. It's a whole bunch of... Yeah. I always thought Fain would be really cool as the new Dark One. Yeah. No, is that like along the same lines of like what happens if
Rand had managed to kill the Dark One.
I always thought that would be a cool plot line, is Rand, like, kills the Dark One, and...
Because there has to be a Dark One, there can't not be.
And then, like, there's a void there, and, like, Rand realizes he has to take the place of the Dark One, and that's like, oh no, whatever will I do? And then Fain, like, basically pulls a golem and jumps in and, you know, sort of takes the place, because he's just, like, a perfect fit, because he's already been touched by the Dark One, and he brings a whole new... And then what we have is the other half, like, every other turning of the wheel, we have sort of the female half of evil, which is the Fain evil, and then we switch over to the male half of evil, which is the Dark One evil, and that swaps every turning of the wheel.
I'm here for it. I'll read that series.
Yeah. I like that. That would be a cool ending to me. The other ending I thought would be cool is if Rand killed the Dark One, realized the world was created like this sort of place where people were all good, and realized that was bad, and so he had to basically recreate evil and reweave the threads around him, and in doing so he creates his own prison and creates the prison from scratch, and he is the Dark One in the next turning of the cycle.
Oh, that's such a sad ending for Rand, though.
Right? But like,
after everything,
in order to keep the world from being destroyed in the good side.
No, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it.
Yeah, no. So like, or he could put Moradin, asha'man, in that place, and he could be like, well, someone's got to be there. You're the new Dark One. You get to live forever as the Dark Evil One imprisoned.
But I mean, that's pretty sad for Ishii, because like he just wants to be let go. But that kind of leads to even especially with the whole asha'man thing is like, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but the whole thing about the immortality of the Dark One, the only reason that people can be immortal is because the Dark One can do the body swaps for people, and he can pull it. So it's not like asha'man gets to live as asha'man in asha'man's body forever. It's like you got to switch the soul into a new body, and that's why Balefire does the whole like, oh, you're gone because it burned you out before you actually died, so I can't body swap you at that point.
You can still be reborn through the pattern because your spool isn't burned completely.
Yeah, so my question is like, was asha'man just like a super philosopher who like figured out that this was just like a thing that was going to happen forever and ever and ever and ever? Or is asha'man some sort of tortured soul who the Dark One has literally been reincarnating for tens of thousands of iterations, where he's gone to the point where he is just like, I'm done with this man, because he has been alive and asha'man has been around for that many iterations? Because like, we don't really know. Do we know the origin story of Ishii as who he was in Age of Legends? Like, do we know much about that?
Yeah, I mean, we know who he was. We know him as Elan, like, as a normal guy. Like, he came up, but like...
But how much do we know? Like, is he just like was that his first iteration, and then he was like, he philosophized about how this works? Or is Aelon actually from a previous time that still remembers all that stuff?
Right. That's a good question. I've always assumed Aelon was born in the Age of Legends, and just, I think his whole "you and I have fought a million times, a million battles" is sort of a reincarnation, we are destined to do this, not necessarily...
Yeah.
I have been around for all of those battles. I think that has more to do with... Also, I think he was insane, right? Like, that's... Like, I think he
doesn't help.
Yeah, like, and he was nuts.
Yeah.
I like the theory that he's been around for, like, many, many, many turnings.
I like to speculate on that because he's so done with it. He's so over... I'm over this. I don't want it anymore. We gotta break this shit apart.
My only thing is, like, I do think he would Balefire himself in that. He would escape the cycle of...
Hey.
What?
Can you Balefire yourself?
All you have to do is open a gateway and just have it, and then just go ahead and when you can see your back, and just Balefire yourself through that. I'm sure no one has ever asked Jordan that question and got a sarcastic answer back.
Easy. It's like what would you do with a portal gun?
Please, PG answers only.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I've never seen anyone. Yeah, that's a tough one. So
the follow-up question to what would you do with a portal gun is sucking your own dick gay, or is that just like masturbation?
Yeah. No, it's fair game.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
I think you're fine. I think you're fine. You've been watching.
You just got to get some of your ribs taken out, right? That was the. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring you back 20 years here. The big was it Marilyn Manson rumor or whatever that totally. Like everybody in every school ever spread.
So one of my favorite lines here that she says to Min is, "You're no milksop. Any fool can see that, so stop pretending." I wanted to say that to Min so many times. Stop pretending like you are enthralled to this man. You're clearly an intelligent, like...
It's that, what's it called? When you don't feel like you belong in the place that you belong in because you're not good enough to be there.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's the one. Where it's like a little bit because she's like the lover of the Dragon Reborn in this position of like ultimate power beside this guy. And she's just from like Barrelon or whatever, so...
Yeah, she's literally from, like, a mining town, and she's, like, a barmaid, right? Like,
just like, who am I to be here? So it's almost like I don't want to pretend that I'm more. Because even when she starts philosophizing about stuff, she thinks, and she's like, oh, I don't want people to think that I'm a philosopher or something. I've just read a couple of books.
And she does that in the last chapter, where they're, like, in the middle of a conversation, and she's like, well, actually... And then goes into this paragraph, and everyone looks at her like, who the fuck are you? And it's like, oh yeah, she's really smart and brilliant, and like, stop, and I think that's what Cadsuane's referring to, is stop pretending to be a milksop. You're clearly an intelligent, like, well-read person.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, if you read every book on philosophy ever written in this day and age, and you studied under the best philosopher of this day and age, and it's like, maybe you are a little bit of a philosopher, even if you don't think that you are.
No, and she provides more key insights to the last battle than any educated Aes Sedai ever does.
It's because she's a philosopher, right? Like, that's what's going on here.
What Ajah would you put her in?
Oh, man. I feel like this was a SpoilerCon question last year or something, wasn't it? So I want to say brown, just because she has that desire to learn. She likes to study. She clearly is good at it, and she's curious. And I don't subscribe to that whole, if you're going to have a boyfriend, you have to be green. It's just like, it's not useful to the conversation.
Whereas I would put her in white. That philosophy, the logic, the like...
Oh yeah, that's true too. I'm going to change that. It's white. Yeah, it's not brown. Yeah, I'm wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone immediately goes, oh, she reads books, she must be brown. But like, there's so many other, if you're reading books on healing...
The issue is like white and gray is so ill-defined. In my opinion, of like in the series, it's like it's there, but it's not really there that much.
No, and I always think of the white as much more like the philosophers, the scientists.
I think white is literally described as like logic and philosophy.
Yeah, but
because philosophy is logic.
But so I think of them as the scientists, right?
Yeah.
The experimenters, the one who was going to test things out, right? Try like. The Browns are the historians, the researchers, the documenters, right? Like, but Browns aren't discovering anything new. I feel like the Whites really should be. They should be using logic to come to new conclusions.
Yeah, that's a great way to say. Like, I would be Brown because I can't invent any new, but I like to read about stuff that other people have done. I'm very curious about that. But yeah, no, I think you're 100% accurate, and White would be the right place for that.
So then so basically Cadsuane makes Darlin carry Rand, which has just got to be the most ironic thing for him. He's like, wait, I'm carrying the man I'm rebelling against? But it's the foundation of the whole rest of the relationship and how Darlin becomes King of Tyr, and like...
Darlin has a huge plotline to go for. Like, and I kind of understand, like, I do understand why there would be rebellion against Rand. Like, I get that. Mm-hmm. Because Darlin's points that he kind of brings up, he has, like, I think it's either him or Toram. Like, there's something to be said about Rand came in the Tyr. It's usually like the council, right? And they're High Lords rather in Tyr. And we don't have a king. We haven't had a king since like Hawkwing, I think it was, that Tyr hasn't had a king.
Right.
And Rand just kind of came in. He's king by conquest. And I understand why someone wouldn't be super happy about that, even if it is the Dragon Reborn, because that is still kind of like, it's mythology. Like, for a lot of people, the Dragon Reborn is a myth.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and not in my lifetime, right? Like, I think that was even Padan Fain was like, well, the last battle might be coming, but not in my lifetime, right? I've got years, decades to get ready for it.
Exactly. So, like, I understand why there would be rebellion, so I don't inherently think that everybody who rebels against Rand is a bad person.
No.
Like, Caroline Damodred is, like, even her in this scene is rebelling against Rand and immediately covers for him.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you see that range here. You see everyone from Toram, who's rebelling because he's a nasty, evil man who wants power, all the way up to, Caroline and Darlin, who literally is taking a principled stance
Yeah.
And that's how Rand knows he can work with him, you know.
And it's like, I don't necessarily like what's happening to my country right now, so I want to make sure that the best thing happens for my country. And like, I get that vibe. I understand it. So
Rand kind of has to put some trust in him as like, oh, you carried me out of the evil in the worst situation possible. Like, all you had to do was basically drop me and walk away, and I would have been dead. So there's a certain amount of trust there that you build up just because.
Can we talk about how much of a stud Darlin is and how in shape this guy is to be able to carry
crap.
Rand?
Rand's huge.
I carry my 30-pound kid on my shoulders for 15 minutes, and I am dead. I am dead tired. It's so difficult. It's impossible. And Darlin is like shouldering Rand, who's got to be like, I would say probably 220, like muscle.
Minimum. I mean, at that height, like you'd have to be a beanpole at that height at 220, and he works out.
Dude's got like 1% body fat. He is solid
muscle. So like,
but he's like lugging, and yeah, we get the little pickup where it's the Aes Sedai every time Darlin almost falls, they catch him with air. But like, this dude's back, I feel for it because I got back problems, and like, it's just like, sorry, man, we're. Why don't the Aes Sedai use the power? I would just pick him up with the power.
Just carry him with the power, yeah. No, that actually, I think it's because they want to be able to cast fireballs at the sky, and they're not.
No. I it's like, I get why.
But this is a torturous walk, right? We already, especially from Min's POV, when she's like, yeah, I'm doing it in high heels.
It's also very impressive.
But you can see, like, from their perspective, Caroline and Min are doing it in heels, in skirts, without the power to aid them. The Aes Sedai must be using the one power to keep from falling.
Or something. Like, I'm not sure, but I mean, they're also, like, Cadsuane is a very well-seasoned traveler, and they're not wearing heels. They're...
True. And they're not sweating because they're Aes Sedai, but the lack of falling to me makes me think that they're using the one power as, like, to lean on, basically, as like walking poles or something like that.
Yeah, definitely could be some sort of trick. It's the other Terangriel that she's got, is like the don't fall one.
Right. Yeah. Well, she's got it's like an app, you know. Cadsuane's got like an Angreal for that.
Yeah.
And then we notice Caroline is acting very protective over Darlin. She very much is like, yeah, I'm gonna marry that man, and we see them later get married. So,
yeah, that's cute because we like the two this one and the last one is the whole back and forth between Darlin and Toram both being like, I'm gonna marry Caroline. So,
yeah, no, that's a relationship that like everyone saw coming, and you know,
well, Min foretold it too in these chapters, didn't she?
Yes, yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
so she knows they're getting married after she leads him on quite a chase, I believe was the terms. A woman could forgive any amount of nose for that laugh. Jordan and his fucking noses. Well, I'll tell you.
There's a thing there. There's got to be some sort of thing. It's like the hat thing.
This is when we get the horse torn in two. You know, we talked about that in the top of the show, just like the horror aspects of this thing. And then they walk into the sun. They get out of the mist.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just a hell of a horror sequence.
Yeah, we talked a lot at the beginning about how terrible that all was, so... Yeah, but this is where they get picked up by Ander Toll. Ander Toll the farmer.
And this is the only mention of him. It's not like he doesn't come back with an apple tree or anything at the end of the series.
Yeah.
He's just...
Yeah.
Just a turnip farmer. Although it does remind me, are you a fan of Avatar: Last Airbender?
No, I've never seen it.
Okay, yeah. Well, then...
I've seen enough memes about it, but like, I don't...
Yeah. And this is the cabbage guy, basically. His cabbages.
I kind of get that. Do you have a cart of cabbages?
He had a cart of cabbages that, like, where basically whenever something bad happened, he'd be in the right spot, and his cabbages would always get destroyed, and he'd go, my cabbages! Okay. You know, so I've
seen that. I know enough about it. Okay,
so this is my turnips, like, basically how I think of this guy. Like, what? No, my turnips.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this guy, except for the fact that it's totally in the spirit of RJ to write a page and a half of getting picked up by a farmer and who has turnips to sell, and then how they go about getting him to give up his turnips and then so that they can take it. It's like there's so much that is like not necessarily necessary, but it's necessary.
This could have been a line of they grabbed a ride with a farmer. A turnip farmer.
For sure.
Like
I'm not a writer.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
like, I could make it not 2 pages. of this guy?
Rides on a cart, man. This is a nice little callback to early books when Rand got a ride on a cart.
It is. It's bringing him back to his roots of who he really is, and he's the guy who sits on the back of carts.
Gets towed around by hardworking farmers, and he just steals their labor. Bourgeoisie, I'll tell you what. Lord never does anything hard work himself. Oh yes, the unit. People are complaining about our units being in pounds and miles. Could you please speak Canadian and convert that stuff to meters and stuff?
You know what? We use miles here too. Like we switch back. Like I've switched back and forth all the time. Like we've got mile roads and stuff, but it's like in the country, like they're all mile roads.
Interesting. Do you drive? What's the speed limit? Is it like in kilometers per hour or miles per hour?
Yeah, it's in kilometers. Yeah, it's 100.
But the roads are in miles.
Sometimes, yeah. It like depends. God. It's a very flip-floppy system. And it depends where you go.
At least the American system is consistently bad. The Canadian system is like, yeah, we're mostly bad, but sometimes we use regular units just to confuse you.
Like, if you ever ask anybody what their height and weight is, they're going to answer in, like, feet and pounds. But then, like, on licenses and stuff, it'll probably be centimeters. But, like, very few people can convert that in their brains. Like, and I certainly can't. But it's just, like, it's such a mishmash system. You just got to go with it.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's a very Canadian episode. Actually, no.
Hey.
Yeah.
I like that.
This is 3/4 Canadian. We've only got like a 1/4 American. Yeah, that works.
Is it too Canadian to say that we had Danny cooked up a salmon tonight for dinner, and it had a maple syrup glaze? Is that too Canadian?
Delicious.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Maple syrup glaze on salmon is like,
oh, beautiful. Was it like a reduction of the maple syrup or?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like it's like a nice little sweet flavor on. It's fantastic.
So
I love
good.
it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
You can put maple syrup on everything.
I never went to the store and bought like American maple syrup, the like colored high fructose corn syrup. And I was like, okay, yeah, turn around and go back and get real maple syrup.
Go get the real one. Yeah. It's like in the glass jar.
Right,
Let's get it.
What are you doing? Like This did not come out of a tree. This came out of a plant. Like, this is not okay.
You know what's funny is I'm also drinking Canadian Club whiskey.
Nice. With the blackberry?
Uh-huh.
Yep. What were you saying? I think you said that before recording. You saying you had some trouble getting that locally?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I can't buy it in Edmonton where we're at, but I can buy it like in Calgary, which is like 3 hours south. Also for distance, typically if you're going to measure distance, you measure it in amount of time it takes to travel there.
Yeah, light years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, like it takes like 2.5 hours away to get to Calgary. Oh, I'm going to Winnipeg. Well, how far is it? Oh, it's 14 hours. I'm not going to say, oh, it's like, 1,500 kilometers or something crazy like that. I'm going to say it by the amount of time it takes me to get there.
And that's car culture to a T as well, right? Like that's where you have to get in the car and drive anywhere you go. You're going to measure it in how many hours are you in the car because
it's so funny. It's like, oh, how far away do you work? It's like 15 minutes. Because it doesn't matter how many. It's like, how long does it take me to get there?
Because I've lived like a mile away from work, and it took me like 25 minutes to get there. I live 25 minutes away from work, even though it is.
The distance doesn't matter. Exactly. It's like, what are we really talking here? I want to know how long it takes me to get there. So hey, I think we're onto something there.
Especially in a car. Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah. There's this whole like time is distance times speed and. Time and space aren't actually separate things. I think some guy
it's like relative or something.
Yeah.
Some guy said that.
Yeah. I don't think he's ever had that many good ideas, but I think he nailed this one. Yeah.
What were we talking about? You asked me a question, I think.
No, I think we were just talking about Andertoll.
Yeah, Farmer brought them.
Right.
Okay.
So I think basically Min and Cadsuane's conversation about what happened to Rand to make him not want to wake up surrounded by strange Aes Sedai in a strange place.
Yeah, that's important.
And she really does spill the beans.
She does.
Yeah, this is like Cadsuane gets everything from start to finish about what happened to Rand, what the Aes Sedai did to him, and including his response, which I love. He stilled 3 sisters, Summitsu said shrilly. Suddenly she slapped a hand over her mouth and twisted around to lean over the side of the swaying wagon and retched loudly. Nadine,
that's what gets them about this story.
Yeah, joined her almost before she began. They just went through a bunch of people torn to pieces, and they had no problems with that. But the idea of stealing makes them vomit.
Well, it's the something that can happen to me, right? And sure, I can be ripped apart in the mist, but as an Aes Sedai, it's not like my number one fear. My number one fear is stealing.
Right. And being stuck to live without access
without the power.
Especially since we know they're able to be healed now.
That's true.
And I think
that kind of takes the relevance out of it.
And those sisters do get healed, actually.
They do. All three of them,
Yep.
I think, right?
And I think, isn't it Flynn that does it?
Yeah, because, he's the guy.
Interesting that we bring that up here when Flynn sort of gets introduced as the good healer that he is.
That's true. Thank you, Deshiva.
Yeah, thank you, Deshiva. Thank you, Osengar, for...
No, thank you, Arengar.
No.
Right?
No, Arengar is Halima.
Agenor is Osengar, right?
Yes. Agenor is Osengar is Deshiva.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's so, yeah.
Halima is Arengar is Bethalmel.
Yeah, it's like, why would Agenor be Arengar? Agenor is clearly Osengar.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why would you keep the A with the A? No, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, all three of those sisters do get a full healing because they're healed by a man. And when you...
It's the opposite thing.
Opposites repel, you know...
Yeah.
A bridge made out of the power that you're using is sticky, is how I think of it.
You can't make... Yeah.
And you need sort of like a hydrophobic coating to make the water flow smoothly. So you need something that repels what's being pumped through it.
It's got to be the opposite thing to make it go through properly.
Right. Whereas like
the other, it works, but it's not great.
Right. With Suan and Leanne, the fact that they're using saidar to channel saidar creates friction. And that's something that Rand really takes advantage of. You know, there's a lot of little metaphysics that go into the cleansing, right? The fact that saidin and saidar repel each other is super important for the funnel. The fact that evils pulse in opposite veins and do repel each other and do fight each other is super important to the cleansing. We are really building up a lot of sort of key bits of information that Rand needs to cleanse the taint.
I love that it's like behind the scenes too. Like he's piecing it together behind the scenes and not really talking about it. And then he's like, I got this. And he goes and does it.
I think one of my biggest disappointments about the series is the fact that nobody freaking reacts to the taint being cleansed.
They just don't believe. They react in the sense like, oh, really? I don't believe you.
I don't believe you. And it makes so much sense. Like, it's not like I'm angry at, like, oh, he wrote the characters poorly. No, that's exactly what they would do, of course.
Oh, for sure.
It's frustrating as hell. Like, I just want them...
Oh, the crazy guy is telling me that he's not crazy anymore because he got rid of the crazy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. That thing that's been around for 3,000 years that no one's ever been able to affect, he just up and decided that he fixed it one day? I don't think so.
Yeah. Like, very realistic.
And Cadsuane, they made my task harder than yours, but I'll try not to hurt you more than I must. That's a rough line.
That is.
And an indicator of everything Cadsuane's going to do, whether you
that's
agree
the
with
tough
it or
love
not.
situation.
Yep. And she's going to be the tough love. No,
yeah, very much so.
There's all sorts of opinions about that, and we'll talk about them at length, but it's foreshadowing.
Not for now. Should we get to the Sun Palace? Let's get there.
Yeah, let's get there. So Master Toll goes flying in, squealing, the Aes Sedai made me do it. Which is fine because they see a bunch of Aes Sedai and Rand and Min, and they recognize, well, mostly Min, first of all.
And then we got Nandara freaking out.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's literally guarding the door to his rooms, thinking he's inside. And here he is.
It's like he comes back almost dead. This is just like reiteration of like they messed up somehow. Like this is clearly her fault somehow she's feeling, even though it's clearly not. But
and this leads to them beating the shit out of Rand, right? Him escaping without their permission is what leads to them literally lining up to punch him in the guts.
Yeah.
They hold his honor, and he is stealing that away from them. He is giving them toe.
So that kind of is on the same level as, okay, how do you feel about Cadsuane slapping Rand in the face for using Balefire? How do you feel about the maidens lining up to punch Rand in the stomach or whatever to teach him a lesson about stop, bouncing around, getting lost, getting nearly killed because you're more important than the way you're like acting. And it's one of those things where it's like, sure, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I also understand where, Rand he's not learning the lesson he needs to learn by them telling him this.
And he keeps putting himself in danger. That's the thing, is like, what's worse? The fact that he's going to get himself killed by lack of bodyguards, or the fact that they like hit him a couple of times? It's a tough debate, and it's like they've tried everything else, and it's time to make their point with their fists.
Get some physical punishment in there. So it's a tough conversation to have.
And he's trying to get away. He thinks he can get away with it. He's like, I do this all the time. They'll never know.
Yeah.
Like, when he walked away, he was, like, not thinking he was going to face any consequences with this.
Yeah, and it's like, that doesn't make it better. Just because you do this all the time doesn't mean it's a good idea still.
Right. It makes it way worse, actually. Way worse.
Yeah.
Caroline and Darlin are in the wagon. Any idea what ends up happening to them in the short term? I mean, we know what happens to them in the long term, but in the short term, it's...
I assume nothing very exciting happens to them.
Yeah.
Maybe they develop their relationship a bit because,
Oh, Dobrain reports to Rand that Caroline and Darlin are staying at Lady Aerylillin's place as guests of Cadsuane. So basically, Cadsuane takes them into her possession.
Right. And then Dobrain, frees them, basically?
Yes, Dobrain's armsmen free Lady Caroline and Hilo Darlin from Lady Arilla's palace. They head to Tyr on a riverboat.
Yeah, okay.
And then Rand visits them.
Is this the first time Karuna and Barra have seen Cadsuane?
No, I think...
Did they see her before?
I think they saw her before.
Okay. Because they march in here amongst everything, and then they see Cadsuane, and then they do the whole, okay, they take a backseat, and then they get, sent off by Amos. Yeah, Amos is like, hey, Cerelia, you gotta go and see her. And it's the whole dynamic of Cadsuane seeing a wise one send off 2 Aes Sedai to go see another wise one. And Cadsuane's like, oh, interesting that's happening. Yeah.
She's reading exactly what's going on between all these folks and the fact that, yeah, these Aes Sedai are somehow obliged to do what the wise ones say, and how that's...
Yeah, what happened for this to be what's actually happening right now?
Is she a strong woman? The strongest I have ever known, Amy said simply, calmly. Do we ever get a confrontation between Sorelia and Cadsuane? I can't actually remember it. I think it would be a big deal.
Confrontation? No, I don't think so. And I could totally be mistaken, but I feel like they definitely have some interaction, but it's more like a mutual understanding of 2 extremely powerful women. But I can't, that's the best I got.
Oh, of course. They make the whole thing about the water oath teach Rand laughter and tears. That's with Sorelia.
It was the mutual, respect of they're strong, but there wasn't any Sorelia versus Cadsuane showdown.
Yeah, I guess it's just in The Path of Daggers, chapter 12. Oh, Cadsuane teaches Sorelia about Alana, and in return, Sorelia gives her advice on how to deal with Rand, and teaches Cadsuane how to travel, which is a huge thing. And then they make the water oath. So...
What's more important?
Right? I mean, that's wow. They meet, and it's not really a confrontation so much as 2 people deciding, we have a common goal, and here's the power. So in comes the asha'man, Dashiva and Flynn in particular. And
yes, this is fantastic. This is the showdown we've been waiting for.
The showdown? What do you mean by the showdown?
The showdown between the asha'man and the Aes Sedai here?
Yeah, I guess.
I love this so much. Oh my god. It's just this power dynamic that it's on so many different levels of what's happening here.
I love it.
Oh man.
It's really, really good. Well, and then it's also because Dashiva's forsaken, and he's the one who's convinced...
Levels.
Yeah, just so many levels.
Of so many things are happening right now.
So it is really hard to know, where to start and where to address this.
Let's start at the beginning, and then we'll go to the end, and then we'll stop.
I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, Dashiva walks in.
And immediately says, Flynn, do something, basically. And then, which they know ahead of, he's like, yeah, I know Flynn's the healer.
Yeah, I love it, because the Aes Sedai are all we can do now is wait, because we can't do anything else. And then that's when Dashiva comes in, and he's like, are you just going to let him die? Flynn, go do something. Power move, especially because he's forsaken. It's crazy.
And it gives me a little hint as to how the asha'man have come so far so quickly. It's yes, they have all the teaching that Rand taught Taim some stuff, and Taim knew some stuff, but a lot all the knowledge the asha'man have come from Rand learning it from a Forsaken, Taim learning it from a Forsaken, or Dashiva, who's a Forsaken. all the...
Let me hit you with this. The reason why the Aes Sedai are so underpowered from what they used to be is because the lack of experimentation and the formal education system they have has literally stilted, or whatever you want to call it, their learning systems. Every wilder that you ever see has some sort of newfangled trick.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody discovers weaves by themselves. The only reason in my mind that Avienda and Elaine and Egwene and Nynaeve learn weaves is because they don't have the formal education system saying don't experiment, don't channel in your off hours when you're not supposed to, only do the weaves we teach you, the approved ones, never do anything else. And the asha'man don't have anybody saying that. All it is literally fucking figure it out, guys. Let's do it. And some of y'all are gonna die in the process, some of you won't, like whatever. And that's the big thing, is like experimentation, discovering new weaves. It's all stuff that could have been happening for literally thousands of years with the Aes Sedai, but they didn't because of the education system.
All we all are is just another brick in the white wall.
Yeah. Fund education, number one. Number two, don't let the Black Aja run the White Tower.
That is part of the problem, is that like the Black Aja has shut down all innovation in the name of safety.
But that's the thing. It's like literally, it's like almost like a heavy-handed metaphor for like don't stifle innovation, because without it, it's like you're going to end up with this ivory tower of ineffectual Aes Sedai when you could have had a Black Tower who in what is the length of time that the Black Tower is even around? 6 months, a year? Yeah, it's like zero amount of time they've already surpassed Aes Sedai in so many ways.
But I do want to point out that they are getting information. Like I said, from Forsaken, right? Like, a lot of the weaves, you know, the whole reason that Flynn is good is because he has a Forsaken being like, so have you tried healing in this way? You know, and like, he would have never thought of that without a Forsaken being like, yeah, this is definitely a way that we used to do healing that was much better than the way it's done
now. And I agree
now.
with that. Yeah. But it's like the first time we saw Nynaeve Balefire was long before that. The first time we saw Rand do anything like that was, he's got LTT memory, so maybe we shouldn't even talk about him. Elaine learning how to Avienda travel, 100%. Like, that was before anything else. Elaine doing anything with Terangreal, she started doing that in the circus. So it's like all that innovation is literally just from people experimenting, and it's just... education, man.
Absolutely. And we see that a lot with all the new apprentices that they take on in the rebel camp. A lot of them have interesting things they're learning, and we see Egwene beginning to address that with some of these new apprentices. And like, I can only imagine there's just, they do talk about it as a bunch of talents that are coming out because of the last battle, and like new things are being reborn, old things are coming back.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Wolf Brothers now, and like we haven't had them for a long, long, long time. Like, that does seem to be a change.
Sure. And like there's like, I feel like there's got to be a degree of that, sure, but not a 0 degree. Like, it's not like there was never anybody who could have done this. They very well could have discovered traveling, because that's not got anything to do with a talent necessarily to discover that. You don't necessarily have to have that talent to discover it for the first time by yourself.
Right. And a lot of these wilders are dying, not necessarily because they're experimenting or doing weird things. It's just learning to embrace the power kills 3/4 of them, right? And that's,
there's risks
to it. So bring them in, teach them to touch the power without also causing the sort of educational stunting that we see from the very restrictive curriculum. So, and that's what we see the Rebel Tower doing, is basically creating this whole new way of educating and recruiting people that's far more effective.
It's like a student guided learning.
Totally. Yeah, and that it's almost because the numbers are so big that they don't have, can you imagine going to high school where you had one teacher per student in each class? Like, you'd be miserable.
That's crazy.
You just have a teacher looking over your shoulder all the time. Everything was one-on-one tutoring. Like, that's too much.
Like, not to mention the fact that, I mean, we're getting into like the weeds here, I feel, on public education. I was gonna just like add on, it's like, hey, half of school too is not just about learning, it's about like social engagement.
Totally.
You gotta learn how to be a person amongst other people. That's why being in a school is important. So,
and like being an Aes Sedai and learning how to be among other Aes Sedai, and that's something that Nynaeve really misses out on, is like the whole school educational thing and how to like socialize with other.
And that's
Aes
the thing, is like arguably that's better for Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine and all them, because they didn't have to get sucked into this whole politics side of things and where do I rank with everybody based on my power level.
And bringing it back to Cadsuane, her entire traditional education in the White Tower just got upended and turned on its head when she met that Wilder who gave her the paralysis net, right? Like, she had this whole new education that was just like, everything you learned in grad school, worthless. Absolutely. And that's why she is as effective as an Aes Sedai as she is because her education really occurred post White Tower.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And just like all the other effective Aes Sedai, Moraine, our Supergirls, Cadsuane, most of their learning happened outside the tower.
It's the people who can go and figure it out for themselves.
Right, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, and I feel like we do have another level of that. It's people who went and figured it out themselves, or captured a Forsaken and learned from them.
Always helpful.
Always helpful. Like, it's always nice to have a graduate level professor, as a slave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No big deal. No big deal.
Interesting that Narishma blocks Cadsuane.
Yes, I love this bit with Narishma.
Because doesn't Narishma, he ends up being in a circle during the cleansing with, who's he in the circle with?
Yeah, he's with somebody. I don't remember the name.
He and Elsa Link.
Elsa. Okay.
And Elsa's a dark friend, by the way. She's the one.
That's great.
Yeah, so,
okay.
Basically, she's the one who is like, Rand has to make it to the last battle. How else can the Dark One beat him? So, yeah, she's a little messed up in the head. But Elsa and Narishma bond during the fight at Shadar Logoth. And
Link, not Bond, right?
Linked. Yes, sorry. They
okay.
linked. And Cadsuane, and they're using Kalendor. So they're doing the whole, line of fire. Cadsuane points with, she sees her little Shrike identifies someone who channels, and she points, and they just do the line of fire in that direction. Yeah, and Elsa's also been compelled, right? Because she was compelled by another dark friend, Varen. So Elsa's definitely got all sorts of weird...
Yikes.
That's the whole thing, is when Varen says they have to find justification in their own head, that's sort of what is going on in Elsa's head. That she's found justification to support Rand in her own head, despite being a dark friend. Which is sort of an interesting way that Varen's compulsion has come out in her.
It works, though, right?
It works really well, yeah. But it's just funny to have her be, the owner of Kalendor and burning the shit out. Anyway.
Yeah. So with Cadsuane's sequence in this scene here, too, she gets the whole... She does the thing where she does the condescending thing, where she calls the asha'man boys who have no manners. Because this entire sequence, when the asha'man come in and they're like, Flynn is gonna heal Rand and do more than they have because they've essentially left Rand to die and whatever happens. That's the big issue. And then as soon as Flynn starts doing things, there's all this distrust between the Aes Sedai about the asha'man. It's a little bit convoluted, and I don't like Cadsuane in this scene.
Yeah.
Where she does the whole call them boys thing.
It is, and I think that might be just because she's so old, she thinks of them as children.
Yeah.
But she thinks of everybody as children, right? She's in that point where, she thinks, as far as she's aware, there is nobody out there as old as she is. Not even close.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's unaware of the kin being old. She's unaware of the Sea Folk being old. She's unaware of the Daco Vale being old, because none of them, those are all channelers that haven't sworn their oaths. So as far as she knows, Aes Sedai live longer than anybody else, and she's the oldest Aes Sedai. So, there's some forgiveness for calling everyone boy and girl, because as far as she's aware, she's hundreds of years older than most people out there.
But I mean, with Cadsuane, I don't feel like it's not even necessarily an age thing. It's that my fundamental issue is that they feel, and Aes Sedai, when I say they, so Aes Sedai feel they deserve respect due to who they and what they are. Where it's you must respect me because I'm an Aes Sedai. When it's the asha'man who are coming in and are hey, you don't interfere with our stuff now when we're healing Rand because we're going to actually do something. And even when Samitsu is trying to get in there and hey, what are you doing, Flynn? You better tell me what you're doing. It's you weren't doing anything, so why are you all over Flynn about this?
Right.
Yeah. And that's when Narishma comes in. It's grabs her arm. And is no, don't go. And Cadsuane again says, oh, another boy with no manners.
And this is it's not that they didn't do anything. They did everything they thought that was possible. And since they're the great Aes Sedai, no more can be done. No, right.
That's the problem I have with them, is they're up on this pedestal of we are Aes Sedai and we're better and know everything, even though, which is funny because I'm kind of rooting for Dashiva here, because he uses it's such a funny line. Flynn knows what he's about. Already he can do things you Aes Sedai never dreamed of. And it's a double-edged sword where it's like he could just be a regular asha'man being condescending towards Aes Sedai because, you know, asha'man are better than you, but it's like a second level where it's Forsaken being like, you so-called Aes Sedai.
Yeah, he didn't say so-called, right? Like, if he'd said so-called, it would have been super obvious. So, but like...
But the italicization here...
totally. Aes Sedai, and literally in quotes. Yeah, no, totally.
It's like, I know what he's doing here, and it's hilarious. So...
The amount of obviousness that Jordan put into Deshiva being Forsaken, the fact that he doesn't know how to use his sword, the way he uses power differently than anybody else, how does he have this any knowledge about a different form of healing? Like, all of those things, like, you think about it for 3 seconds, you're like, obviously Forsaken.
Boom, there you go.
The real obvious one to me is the fact that everyone else uses fire, and he casts blue lightning.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
In the battle at the end of this when they go after Samael, everyone else is like fire, 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 and he's like blue lightning, and it's like, what? Where did you learn that? Why are you different than everybody else? Like,
it's the effects. He's cool with it.
Right,
so.
right. It's because he's a Forsaken.
Yeah, because then we got Flynn doing his whole healing thing.
Deshiva acting very worried about Rand dying, very worried. Which just goes to show that, like, we saw it in the Let Lord of Chaos rule and a few other things, but it's very, very clear that the Dark One has given out orders that Rand is not to be killed. He is to be messed with, he is to be fucked with, he is to be tortured, his loved ones are to be killed, he is to be made to feel like crap, but he is not to be killed. The Dark One wants him there at the last battle. Or at least so. He wants him there on the mountaintop, because there's a good chance that Rand was going to destroy the world. And I'm convinced that the Dark One himself can't destroy the world. He needs the Dragon Reborn to do it.
I agree with that. It's like someone from within it's kind of like someone from, so Dark One is outside of time and space. And if you're outside of time and space, you can't directly influence or impact the wheel to break it, because that's kind of like unfair and cheating. So you got to get someone who's in the time and space and in the pattern and in the wheel, like Rand, who can break the wheel apart. So that's why he's got to like push Rand, push him until Rand snaps and Rand breaks the wheel.
Right. And Rand's death would not accomplish that. It would just mean another reset and another battle the next time around.
Exactly. It's like we try again. And that comes back to like flicker sequence too, right? Where it's like over and over again with Rand seeing all the iterations of his lifetime. He dies over and over and over again, and all it is just him dying.
Yeah.
I win again, lose there, and we hit the reset button, we try it again. Because the ultimate goal isn't to kill Rand. That doesn't accomplish anything.
No. That just is the reset until we actually get to the last battle.
Yeah. Like, we need Rand to level up. We need him to get more powerful so he gets to a point where he can break the world, essentially.
Yeah. I was just thinking about live, die, repeat, and just like how much that sounds like the flicker. Like, except instead of one day, he lives his whole life until he dies, and then he does it again, and then he does it again, and then he does it again. We get a bit of that sort of self-talk. We get his backstory about how I was a soldier once until I took an arrow to the thigh. Is that a Skyrim reference? Like, is Jordan a Skyrim fan? Seriously.
When was Skyrim? Okay, when?
Okay, I have no idea.
Do the years line up?
But like, that's such a meme, and to see like almost aped exactly.
Isn't the whole, like, I took an arrow to the knee, but this is a lance to the thigh.
Yeah.
But isn't the whole I took an arrow to the knee metaphor for getting married? Because if you take an arrow, you go down on one knee. And, like, that's where the thing comes from.
I did not know that.
I don't know if it is, but, like, I've heard that, and I don't know how true it is.
Well, the game came out in 2011, which is quite a bit after the book, so probably not. No, not a Skyrim. Maybe Skyrim is a reference to this. Probably not. It sounds like it's totally unrelated things. Just something related to just frequently getting stabbed in the leg, which ends careers because you can't ride a horse when you have a stabbed leg.
I like how he only counts wounds if you can't ride or walk after it. Everything else doesn't actually count.
Any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. That's sort of a similar. Any wound you can walk away from, it doesn't count as a wound. But that makes sense. Like, and if you're in battle, like. So I cook in a kitchen, and like I burn myself all the time, right? But any burn that doesn't blister doesn't count as a burn. Like, it's just,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
like you
even,
stop counting.
it's just, yeah, it's like, why, if it doesn't form a big-ass blister, it'll fade in a couple of days and it won't hurt at all. Like, there's a certain point where minor injuries just aren't worth keeping track of.
Yeah,
And to me,
I get that
yeah.
completely. Yeah, the important part in his self-talk is this, when he's like, then one day Dashiva here says he wonders why it's all the same, no matter if a man's got a broke leg or a cold, and we got to talking, and, well, he's got no feel for it himself, but me, seems I got the knack, you might say. And it's like, oh, okay, so Dashiva just came up to you one day and was like, hey, have you tried this for healing? This might work better.
Hey, I noticed you're a really talented healer. Have you tried a different way of healing? Maybe?
Yeah. Do it like this way. I've never done it personally. I don't know what I'm talking, but I tried this and it might be awesome.
Right. Now, I've never seen anyone else do it or anything, but I just had this idea randomly that maybe all 5 powers should be involved. No, not like that. Not like that. Like, and you're like, what, how? Yeah. There is that little bit of just, like, forsakenness going on.
Just like a little bit of help.
Yeah. This is one of the scenes where I think Jordan is doing such a good job with his layers, right? Like, it's something that it's not in every book, and there's definitely not in every scene in A Crown of Swords, but the last 2 chapters, Master Aria was like this as well, but where there's like 6 different plot lines all going on at the same time, and the way they interact is just so clever and interesting, and I love, it's almost hard to talk about them because there are every time we touch on one thing, there's like 4 different layers to it, and it references like a bunch of different stuff that's going on. Yeah, Samitsu and her whole like wanting to be the best healer and really caring, and like once Flynn figures out how to help Rand, her immediate response is, how did you do that? I need to know now. No more like, you're asha'man, you're dangerous. It's like, oh, you can heal? I'm going to pick your fucking brain. Like, it's like the nerd's nerd.
Well, as soon as she runs up, because she puts her hand on Rand's forehead, so she clearly delves Rand right after he does something, and then like sees that he's like sectioned it off, boxed it away. And that's why I kind of read this as, at the beginning, she's like, hey, get away. What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing because you're a stupid asha'man and you don't know what the... And then as soon as she sees that it's like he did something, then that's when her attitude flips and she's like, hey, teach me. I want to know. I'll have your babies if that's what it takes, but...
And, okay, so what I think it is the beginning of the cooperation between the men and the women, right? Like, this is the seeds of the mutual bonding, the White and Black Tower working together, like...
Well, it's interesting. It's something they can actually get on the same page with, because so much of it is like the powers are so different in so many different aspects, where it's like it doesn't even make sense to talk about what they're doing. Especially coming back to the whole taint thing too. They don't even believe that the taint is gone just because what are you talking about? But this healing of Rand is something that it's tangible, and she can see and like authenticate that it actually did something.
What I also love about it, what I was going to say is, it's the 5 powers, but in a lot of ways, it's not a healing weave, right? What he does is he literally creates a ward, like you would create against dark, like Shadow Spawn, and ties that off.
He boxed it away.
He boxes off this ward for the evil. And so in a lot of ways, it's not even healing. It's healing in the same way that Nynaeve heals madness, right? She peels away the darkness using the powers, and it's almost more like a battle and less like... a healing weave, right? Because
that's a good way to put it.
And it very much feels like he's fighting the taint rather than...
It's... Well, and it's funny in his description of it, because he says, I sort of sealed them away from him for a time. It won't last. They're fighting each other now. So he put up like an octagon cage around them, and it's like, now, okay, you guys fight each other until maybe one of you dies, or you both die. And then hopefully Rand can like heal in the meantime. But yeah, that's exactly what happens.
And it's almost like, well, if you could like carve that whole chunk of flesh out of him, would that like make a difference? But it seems like that would kill him.
Like taking away a gigantic piece of his
right
torso.
Yeah, but if it's sealed off, is that really, it's like he's just sealing off the evil, not the...
But again, we're getting into like the metaphorical, as like what like in of his inside, what's affected? Is like his liver affected, or is like his, I don't know what is there. His stomach is...
Well, I mean, this is the whole Fisher King metaphor, right? Like the wound, the Jesus Fisher King wound in the side, like
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, his blood on the rocks of Sheol Ghul, all of that stuff.
Rand got stabbed with the spear of destiny. Like that's a pretty direct 1-to-1 here. So
Yeah, is this the Spear of Destiny? Is that Fain's dagger?
no, that was Baalzamon's like spear, his
Oh,
staff.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
That was the thing that stabbed him in the side originally. Was his staff, but the one on top of the other isn't. I don't think there's a lot of comparisons for that.
That's a unique twist. Yeah, it's not like someone gets stabbed and then stabbed again.
Yeah, I'm gonna stab your stab wound.
It's one of the most interesting things about Rand to me is this layered stab wound of evil that he manages to like sequester, and it does kill him, right? That's the whole thing. Is like Finn gives him time, but it's not that long. I think we figured out it's definitely less than 6 months to the last battle. Probably more like 4 or 5 months.
No, 100% right. It's like Brand's body is dying. Like he's not gonna make it, and he doesn't. Like his physical body is not gonna last. So,
and we're here in midwinter, and the last battle is late spring.
Yeah, I mean, then you get into the like, okay, how long did the last battle actually last?
Well, yeah.
Depends where you were, I guess.
But for anyone, Rand was the least amount of time in the last battle. Yeah. Anybody, because literally for him, it was a couple of hours, maybe even minutes of actual fighting, and then for everybody else, it was like weeks or months, one might say.
So welcome to my TED Talk about how Interstellar intersects with the Wheel of Time.
Absolutely it does. Yeah, totally. No, the only issue is like the planet would orbit, like you can't have different like months and years passing at different rates on the same planet.
Well, it's like what's the gravitational pull of Sheol Ghul? Like I really need to know that. So
well, the dark one is clearly a black hole, right? So yeah, no, absolutely.
And worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he's got enough mass. So here's my theory is, right, like, okay, E equals mc squared, right? Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So normally a black hole is full of mass, but the dark one is actually energy condensed, right? Which is the true power. So you have all that energy of the true power condensed down at Sheol Ghul. Well, energy creates condensed energy is the same effect as mass. So you get sort of the slowing that you would with a black hole of time.
Yeah, and then you could even put it like, hey, Dark One's on a different plane of existence, so the gravitational pull doesn't necessarily affect everything in the vicinity, just in the vicinity of Sheol Ghul, where the world is funky. So
the only issue is it does seem to be that in the real world, the further you are from Sheol Ghul, the faster time passed.
Yeah.
So it does affect the whole real world, which...
Yeah, it's just not at the same, like, the distance doesn't quite work the same way that it should.
Yeah, it should tear the world apart, right? Like,
yeah,
it really should. Yeah. Like, the world should be, like, in pieces just because of the time dilation. Like...
That's the real moral of the story.
Not caring what anyone thought, Min climbed onto the bed and lay so she could tuck Rand's head under her chin and wrap her arms around him. A chance. Furtively, she studied the 3 people gathered around the bed. Cadsuane in her chair, Amis standing opposite, Deshiva leaning against one of the square bedposts at the foot, all with unreadable auras and images dancing all around them, all with their eyes intent on Rand. No doubt Amis saw some disaster for the Aiel if Rand died, and Deshiva, the only one with any expression, a dark yet worried scowl, disaster for the asha'man, or for the Dark One, and Cadsuane, who was not only known to Bera and Karuna, but made them jump like girls for all their oaths to Rand. Cadsuane, who would not hurt Rand any more than she had to. Cadsuane's gaze met Min's for a moment, and Min shivered. Somehow she would protect him while he could not protect himself. From Amis and Deshiva and Cadsuane. Somehow. Unconsciously, she began to hum a lullaby, rocking Rand gently. Somehow. I love the 3 people. You've got the representative of the Aiel, the representative of the Forsaken, and the representative of the Aes Sedai all like standing there with massively different agendas, but they all want Rand to live.
I was gonna say that's like the number one thing. It's like keep Rand alive. So he's got some people in his corner. It's good,
even if some of them are evil. It's really interesting when he has the Forsaken on his side.
Yeah, well, I think that's the one of the. It's a unique thing. I don't know if it is 100% unique, but I find it very unique to the Wheel of Time, where the enemy doesn't want to kill the protagonist. Like, right from the beginning of the series, it's never really been... Like, sometimes when it's like people get really angry about certain things, sure, there's a little bit about trying to kill Rand. But for the most part, by and large, we're not trying to kill the protagonist. We're not trying to kill Rand. We don't want him dead.
The Dragon Reborn is the only time when asha'man is actively trying to kill Rand. We hear him talk about that game of, basically it's that chess game, right? Where the Fisher King is the one where you can pass back and forth. And that whole and that whole thing is a metaphor for his interaction with Rand. And he talks about how there was only one time where he tried to kill Rand, and that ended for him painfully. And it's like, that's the reference to... And the rest of the time he's trying to manipulate him, to get him on his side, to get him to do what he wants. Yeah.
Well, the amount of times, like, right from book one, it's like the amount of times that Rand is offered, like, come to the dark side, I'll teach you, I can save people you love. Like, all those good things the dark side offers. It's never really about killing him. So, and once you can understand that as a reader, it's like, it takes a little while to really wrap your head around that's not the objective. It's kind of like in Star Wars to me, where it's like when, OG Star Wars, like Luke and Leia and Han are trying to get away. Like, the stormtroopers aren't trying to kill them. So they're shooting, but they're missing. It's not because they're bad shots. It's because they don't want to kill them.
Because you get that line from Tarkin, like, did you put the tracking device on there? Like, they want them to get away so they can track them to the home planet of the rebels. Because they're
trying to scare them. Like, get off the ship. Pew, pew, pew.
Because the whole point of that, like, asking Leia, where are the rebels, they can't break her, right? Instead of breaking her and having her tell them where the rebels are, they let her get away with some asshole who obviously they could have shot at any point, and then let them get away. Don't try and kill them. And that gives you the location of the rebel base, which is the only thing you were looking for.
I don't need to kill this one guy. I need to kill all of them. So it's like, okay.
Same thing with Rand, where, like, no, they want him to get away. They want him to survive because the only chance I have of destroying this world is if he does it. So all I want to do is fuck with his head until he gets so depressed that he wants to destroy the world.
But it's like the fine balance of also need him to get powerful enough where he can destroy the world. Because, like, if you do that at book one, Rand isn't powerful enough to destroy the world. It takes a while.
Keep him alive, keep him in pain. Keep him alive and tortured, basically. That's why Semirog's so good at what she does.
Well, that's why one of my favorite scenes in the entire series is when Rand almost kills Min. Like, that part is so visceral. It's such a great sequence.
Is there anything else on there? I think we've reached the end. And
I think we did it all.
Yeah, that was so much fun. I really enjoyed talking to you, Brett, as always. Just a great time.
Yeah, that was a great time. I appreciate you having me back on here. So,
my pleasure as always. Saying COVID isn't going to be a thing anymore, really, and it's just getting harder and harder to schedule these. So we're probably going to cut back a little bit on guests, not because we don't love guests, but just it's hard to schedule people all the time. So
yeah, no, it's you guys. I get it. It's a crazy thing.
People are like, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "I don't know what Amazon's going to do. How the hell am I going to make plans?"
It's a lot of playing it by ear.
Right. I don't know if they're going to drop the whole season. I don't know if they're going to drop single episodes. I don't know if they're going to do 3 and then go from then on out. I don't know. I don't even know exactly when in November. It's going to be November 5th and then one every week.
Yeah. I think the funniest thing was like every once in a while, like people will be like, hey, do you know when the show is coming or like what they're doing for the show? It's like, I don't know anything more than anybody else does.
I love it when I get those emails.
I am not in communication with Rafe Judkins or the Amazon team or anybody.
I see the same tweets you do, right? Like,
yeah, like we are all on the same page.
No, and honestly, like, there's like Dusty Wheel's gonna get that information before I do. But my theory, backed by zero evidence, right, is episode 1 on November 5th, which is a Friday.
Sure.
8 Fridays, 1 episode per Friday. The final Friday is the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. So we get the finale Christmas Eve.
Yeah, we do.
And we get the first episode November 5th.
I'm okay with that. That's a great Christmas gift.
Trailer, who the hell knows when. I still don't think they know when they're going to drop that exactly.
No, that's the thing. It's like, it sounds like it's shrouded in mystery, but it's just like they're not ready yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of funny. That Zoom gave that warning because it was just told me it was like recording in progress. So
it started doing that a couple, I don't know, 2 months ago, and now every single one of my recordings start off with people going, "Oh, I didn't know Zoom did that."
Yeah, that's like a new feature for sure.
So I don't know if it's just because maybe it's something you can turn off, and I'm like, oh, whatever, it's fine. I actually kind of like it.
It's like a legal thing too, right? Like if you can record someone without their knowledge, I don't want you recording my.
Not that I can't
Zoom.
use OBS to record this anyway, like.
And apparently this is a no pants party tonight because the spoiler pants are.
The spoiler pants are coming off.
So I got to be careful about if you're recording that.
Zool made the comment that you get to take your spoiler pants off today.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, what do I say to taking off my pants with Seth tonight? So I guess it's Saturday night, right?
God. Well, like I said,
get enough whiskey in me, and who knows?
Who knows? If this is a free balling podcast. We free ball the spoilers all the time from beginning to end.
Yeah. Plus Aradia is not here tonight, so.
Right. So it's definitely
it's a boys' party.
Party. We're bringing it back to its origins, where it's just two guys drinking. I got a beer. I haven't been doing much drinking, so forgive me if I get a little overly drunk. But yeah, bring it back to its roots. And I'm back in a basement too. I recently moved.
Hey, okay.
So I was in a 3-story apartment, and I had like industrial fans outside my window, and it just no matter what I did, my quality was shit. I mean, it was fine, but it was not. I had to cut out the fan noise, which sucked. So now I'm back in an insulated basement. I've got soundproof barriers not soundproof, but sound.
Seth, have you has your internet cut out?
Internet, man, technology. You do something a million times, you think I've got this down.
Yeah.
No problem will arise that I haven't handled before.
It's like 350 episodes. What do you add? A lot, right?
This will be 380. It'll be 381.
Holy.
Yep.
Holy moly, Seth, that's a lot of episodes.
We just keep making more of them. Well,
Yeah.
Jordan wrote a lot of chapters, so.
Yeah, it's really his fault if you think about it.
It really is. If he just didn't wrote less, I wouldn't have to. This is entirely his fault, And I was always thinking, like, maybe we can do one of these episodes in like half an hour, maybe combine 2 of them, and it's like, no, there's so much detail in here. There's so much to talk about, and like everyone, especially with all the guests coming on, everyone's got their own opinion.
Definitely,
So even it's the same stuff on 2 different episodes, it's different content.
Well, it's kind of funny because like what you do and what I do like are still pretty different. Like there's similarities, but it's like really far apart because even like we're able to combine 2 chapters, but that's like pushing it. We're getting into the stage now where it's like I feel like it's pushing it. But with a first reader, right, it's like there's not necessarily as much to talk about because it's speculation and tying back to only what's happened before. We're not talking about what happens next.
So this thing is time is a loop, right? So you really need to be able to talk exactly.
Keep talking about,
both what, because like we really are now. We get to the point where we're like, hey, remember when he foreshadowed this? And we can go back and talk about that, and we can also be like, oh, remember what he's foreshadowing, And so
I was reading last chapter, and it's like the David Hanlon, I think his name is whatever, and Min had the viewing. She warns Caroline, like, oh, stay away from this guy because he's a dick. And it's like, you don't even know how much of a dick he is yet.
Yeah, can't wait until Brigida puts an arrow through his freaking heart after he kills her. Yeah,
oh my God.
That's such a satisfying scene.
Oh yeah, heart-wrenching at the beginning of that sequence, but it's good how it ended.
Like David Harlan's death is one of the most satisfying moments. Like it really is when the last battle turns around, right? Like his death is sort of signals the beginning of the recovery of the light. So he really is like the most evil of the evil, the first to die in the turnaround, he's the worst. Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's not what we're here to talk about though. Like,
yeah, no, but like that's what you can't talk about with Danny.
I know, and that's the thing. It's like, oh, I can be like, hey, notice how she says this about this guy? Okay. And in like 3 years,
well, you're gonna
remember this. Yeah. It's gonna be great. Yeah.
But I mean, you guys are going through at a remarkable pace still.
Yeah. We're almost at the end of Fires of Heaven. And I always forget, like, Fires of Heaven and then Lord of Chaos are so friggin' long compared to, like, the next 5, I think. Like, 7, 8, 9, 10, like, 11 are relatively shorter.
They are, and they have many fewer chapters, right? This thing is like Crown of Swords has 40 chapters, and like then Path of Daggers has like 36 or something like that, and then like, and it's like, dude, book 1 through 6 had like 50 chapters in every book.
I know, yeah. So it's crazy.
So in a lot of ways, it's actually nice because we get to zoom through the slog at a faster rate because we don't, we're doing fewer episodes on the slower books.
Exactly.
But each episode is long because there's a lot of name salad going on.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?